2021. Purpose of the committee meetings is for the city departments to pass along information to the city council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor, members of the city council, and the city administrator. The ordinance mandates the city administrator as the chair of the committee meetings. This is a public meeting, not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, we do not take public comments or questions during the meetings. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings held at 7 p.m. in the city council chambers on the second and fourth Monday of each month. First item on today's agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for April 13th, 2021. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Councilmember Judy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. It's unanimous. Thank you. Moving under Public Safety, number 2, approval of text amendment to Chapter 8, Health and Public Safety, Article 8.7, Air Pollution Control, Section 8.7.4, Prohibited Acts by deleting Section 8.7.3, Open Burning, and creating a new Section 8.3.19, Open Burning of the Code of Open Burning and the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Chief.
Good afternoon. We came back to make some clarifications on what we're trying to do. First of all, I want to let everybody know that this proposed ordinance is to prevent fire in the city and save lives. We have a couple things that we want to go over, and first thing I want to go over is sort of a little bit of a fire dynamics and what happens with these fires. When you have a fire, say a campfire, recreational fire, you have wood that's burning and there's moisture inside that wood. And that moisture expands from steam and pops off a little piece of wood, what they call burning bran. This is the spark that goes up in the air. Now that thermal column or the heat will pick up that, make that burning bran buoyant so it flies up in the air, follows that heat column. If there's a slight wind, it will tail off and fall outside of that thermal column and then fall to the ground. All right. Now, on a small fire, 3-foot fire, 2-foot high fuel, it's pretty much that you can contain those burning brands within a 15, 20-foot area. Okay. On a larger fire, a bonfire, then you would have a stronger thermal column, more burning brands, and as they go up higher, they would move farther away from the fire, possibly into somebody else's property. So this is how we get the distances. When we talk about distance from the fire to a combustible material or the fire to the property line, it's solely to try to control where those burning brands fall away from that fire. And we try to keep them on the property, so to speak. Now, that's not to say that a burning brand can't go up in the air and get carried and, let's say, go underneath a deck and catch pine straw on fire. Or it could go up in the air and hit the deck and roll underneath a planter and smolder underneath that planter, causing a fire. Or go up on somebody's roof. Or cause a fire in the woods with dried leaves. So these are all possibilities. This ordinance that we're proposing is to try to reduce the possibility of that happening. Okay? The other thing that you need to know about fire, fire transmits more energy through radiant heat than it does through convected heat. The convected heat is the hot gases coming off of the fire. The radiant heat is the light. Now, you've all experienced this because when you've been sitting at a campfire and somebody moves in front of you and blocks your light, what happens? You get cold. And when they move again, you feel the heat. Okay, so that radiant heat is another factor that transfers fire from the fire, energy gets transferred to another object. As the other object absorbs that heat, it starts to get to the point where it can catch on fire. Now, I have some statistics here from the NFPA report on outside burning. It's available online, and it's specifically for home grills and outdoor fires. In the period of 2014 to 2018, on average, there was 10,600 outdoor fires a year caused by recreational fires and cooking fires. Now, of these 10,600 fires, 46% of them caused structure fires. Almost half of the fires cause structure fires. Okay, of the structure fires, 44% of those fires started on decks, 27% started on patios, and 16% were unclassified, meaning they could have caught brush on fire or they could have caught some other object on fire, but not necessarily the house. Okay, first ignition. What causes the first ignition? On 45% of these fires, the siding caught on fire. That's the radiant heat. So the grill was too close to the siding. The heat radiated to that siding, hit the ignition temperature of that siding. Siding gets on fire, burns the house down. All right. We had this experience June 23rd in the city of Roswell last year, where we had a house completely engulfed in fire, and it was because of a grill on the deck. It started on the deck. That was the fire that we had. 2 firemen went inside and pulled an elderly gentleman and his dog and saved them from the fire. That was a deck fire caused by a grill, okay? Funny thing, people say, well, gas grills are safer. Well, 84% of the fires, 84% were gas-fired grills. And you say, well, how can that be? There's no sparks, there's no radiant heat. But what's on there? You have a propane tank that's pressurized fuel. And the number one cause of that is the failure of the hose from the propane tank to the grill. So when that hose fails, fire shoots out all over the place, and of course you're going to catch something on fire. And it's under pressure, and it takes a long time to put it out. So these are some of the reasons that we're looking to enact a burn ordinance that's a little bit more strict than the state code, but it's going to completely update the existing ordinance that we have. And that's the whole purpose here, is to update that old ordinance that's been around for a long, long time, it's very vague, and bring it up to meet the current state code. But there are a couple areas that we want to be a little, which one does he put on that one there? We want to be just a little bit more strict. And the first thing I want to do is break it down as soon as this comes up. And we have, on the one column, we have the current ordinance. In the center column, we have the International Fire Code. And on the right-hand side, we have the proposed ordinance. And one of the first things I want to do is identify what a bonfire is. Because you say, well, hey, a bonfire is a little 3-foot campfire, right? No. According to the code, a bonfire is a fire that is larger than 3 feet in diameter. It maintains a distance so that there's more people that can get around it. It's for ceremonial or for a recreation or what was the name of it?
Ceremonial purposes.
Ceremonial purposes, but also for an event like a bonfire, like a pep rally or something like that. So the code provides for that. All right, now our current ordinance does not allow it. They say we're restricted to 3 feet in diameter. The international code or the state law allows for a bonfire, but it has to be 50 feet from the structure. What we do is we're going to treat that bonfire as a recreational fire that is larger than 3 foot in diameter. So a recreational fire is 3 foot in diameter, larger than that. We say you have to have a permit. So you can have a bonfire. You just have to come and get a permit first. And what we'll do is we'll look at the lay of the land, we'll look at the site, we'll look at combustibles, we'll look at what you're going to burn, we'll look at all the factors that surround that bonfire, and then we'll determine, number one, if you can have it at the location you want to have it, or we will put restrictions on it. We may say that you have to have a fire truck here just in case something happens. So whatever we do when we go out and inspect that site for the permit process, then they'll know exactly what it is. So technically, we do allow a bonfire. Campfires, recreational fires with no container. And what that means is you have a fire on the ground. You might have bricks around it. You might have a fire ring, something that's an open fire. The current ordinance allows for a 3-foot fire in diameter, 2-foot high fuel. The state law allows the 3-foot fire, 2 foot high, but it requires it to be 25 feet from a structure. Now, again, we talked about the burning brands. That's the reason for that 25 feet. That and the radiant heat coming off of that recreational fire. And in the ordinance that we are proposing, we are going to stick with that and say 3 foot in diameter, 2 foot high fuel, and 25 feet from a structure. Okay? Commercially manufactured portable fireplaces. All right? Right now, our current ordinance does not address them. The state law has no restrictions in 1 or 2 family dwellings. So you can put them inside your house if you want to. They have no restrictions. Our ordinance, we want to be a little bit more restrictive, and we want to say, hey, give us 15 feet. 15 feet is from the front of this podium just about to the edge of that step right there. That's 15 feet from a structure. We counted it out. All right, that's not far. And it's reasonable. And the reason that 15 feet, there's some distance there, is because another reason is the code wants the people around that fire to have room to move around the fire safely, not try to wedge around the fire and possibly fall in. So where the state code says under residential they have no restrictions on it, we would like to propose a 15-foot restriction to the structure, to combustibles, okay? But in a commercial setting, the state code says they have to have 15 feet. So we're just transferring the commercial requirements to the residential requirements. So it's a reasonable thing. We feel it's a reasonable thing to do. Approved container. Our current ordinance does not address approved containers. The state law allows 15 feet from combustibles, and we allow 15 feet from combustibles. Again, that goes along with the portable fireplace. It's a reasonable distance. Warming fires. Currently, we allow a warming fire on a property that does not have a CO. It has to be in a 55-gallon drum. The temperature has to be below 50 degrees. Okay, the state law does not address warming fires at all, and in the proposed ordinance, we would like to keep it to what the current ordinance says, in a 55-gallon drum, less than 50 degrees. Okay? Flammable liquids as a starter. It's not addressed in our current ordinance. It's not addressed in the state law, but we are prohibiting it. And that's when somebody takes gasoline and throws it on the fire to get started. Bad idea, okay? Number of fires per address. We currently do not address how many fires you can have on your property at one time. The state code does not address that, but we would like to address it and say you're only allowed to have 1 fire on your property at one time. However, if you wish to have more, come see us for a permit, and we'll allow you to have a permit process and allow you to have multiple fires. Now, the reason for this is very simple. We have production companies that come in, and they sometimes want to have fires. They have, sometimes they want to have bonfires, other types of fires that our current ordinance is restrictive. They're technically not allowed to do that. But with the permit process that we're allowing, that allows the fire marshal to go out, look at the situation, determine what needs to be done, and allow them to burn with the permit and instructions. Okay, supervision during the fire. Our current ordinance does not require supervision, or it doesn't address it. State law requires supervision until all embers are put out, and also requires the presence of an extinguishing agent, a garden hose or a bucket of water or something of that nature. We are mirroring that, and we are going to require that be attendance until all embers are extinguished, and also require the extinguishing agent, whether it be a garden hose, a bucket of water, or sand. And now the fines. This was a big question last time. Our current ordinance, the fine is up to $2,000, 180 days in jail, and or 180 days community service, okay? The state law, there's no fines prescribed, but that's up to the judge. What we are asking is up to $1,000 fine, and that the person be, the responsible party be liable for costs to extinguish the fire if necessary. So if you start a fire on your property and it spreads to another property and we have a big forest fire or we have another house that catch on fire, then we should be able to recuperate the cost of extinguishing that fire from that person that started the fire. Now, the $1,000 fine, let me just explain real quick. This is a complaint-driven enforcement. 99% of the fires that are out there in the city of Roswell, we never know about because they're small fires and people are doing what they're responsible. The 1%, though, we get a call, a complaint of somebody burning, and we go out and investigate it. We send a fire truck out. And typically, if we go out there, we say, hey, look, you're not allowed to do this. It has to be 3 feet in diameter, 2 feet high, have to have a water hose next to it. And they'll say, oh, okay, we'll do it. And they comply, and we drive off, and everybody's fine. But you got 1 out of 100 that's a knucklehead that's out there, and he's going to argue with the firemen. Then when they leave, he's going to start the fire again. And then maybe the next day, we'll come back. We'll come back and tell him to put it out, and he'll put it out. And then the next day, he might start the fire again. We'll be back there 3 or 4 times. We'll send the fire marshal out, and we'll give him a ticket. Now, it cost us money. It cost the citizens money to run that fire truck out there twice, the fire marshal out there once or twice, to tell this guy, you can't do this. It costs money for us to do that. So what we would do when that case comes up to the judge, we would say, hey, judge, this is what we had to do. The guy, we told him to put it out several times. And it's up to the judge to make that determination of the fine. So we're not just out there driving down the road and giving people tickets for having a fire and saying it's $1,000. That's not what we're doing at all. That fine is only for those that just don't want to comply with the ordinance, to give the firemen a hard time and continue to burn and disregard the ordinance. That's where the fine comes in. And that's pretty much where we're at. Do you have any questions?
Floor is open. Councilman Palermo.
Thank you. Chief, I appreciate the discussion, the education, and all the details. And I think, what's kind of clear is the reminder, what I love about our fire department and fire departments in general, they just want to keep people safe. You just want to protect people and make sure to reduce risk, and your heart's totally in the right place, and I appreciate that. And I think there's some great advice here. There's a number of things that make a lot of sense from all angles. For example, how you're describing the bonfires and aspects like that. But I also see it similar to when we get advice from legal. Legal will give us advice, and ultimately City Council needs to make the decisions factoring that in, but ultimately making a decision that they feel is balanced and is doing the right thing for the community. And so you have a lot of things on here that I think make a lot of sense, but the 2 things that really stick out to me is that this would be making it illegal for many residents to have a fire pit. Basically, I walked through the UDC building setbacks, which basically showed that if you guaranteed want to be allowed to have a fire pit, you have to have an acre property, which means so many residents in Roswell that have a half an acre, quarter acre, heck, even some having 3/4 of an acre, would not be allowed to have a fire pit anymore. I see some similar potential risks regarding the grills as well, but I'll focus on the fire pits for now. And so that's where I have a concern. And you brought up actually my real concern is it's going to be complaint based. And I have seen experiences where I can probably think of 4 different neighborhoods where there would be neighbor disputes, and so just a lot of complaints coming in. And in fact, one of them I remember years ago was based on a fire pit, where basically the neighbor would call the police, call the fire department on the fire pit. Fire department brings a truck up, sees that it's 3 feet in diameter, less than 2 feet, which was allowed. And so therefore the fire department said, all right, I shouldn't have been called for this. Yep, you're doing a great job. That's safe. It's in there. That being said, that property was probably about definitely less than half an acre. So going forward, they would not be allowed to have a fire pit. And so we'd be taking away that what I consider being right and a quality of life thing. So, that's where I have issue with that one. I can certainly express my issues that I have with the grill, and just the fact that we do have so many Roswell decks, et cetera, that do have a grill set up. I want to discuss that one more, but my bigger focus is on the fire pits and going down to fines. If the recommendation was that we're going to actually do all of your exact proposed ordinances as written, and the fine was that they would be liable for any cost to extinguish the fire, I'd be 100% on board. I'd say no question. If they did any of this and there's a fire and our fire department extinguishes it, then absolutely they should be fully liable for all those costs. But my concern is the complaint-driven up to $1,000, where basically we're telling the majority of residents they're not allowed to have a fire pit. And I think we would see potentially a lot of potential complaints and violations. And in Roswell, we have, on average, I believe we have much smaller lot sizes than, say, like a Milton. So in Milton, this is all, I think, more realistic, where they have a lot more land to work with. But as we've seen smaller and smaller lot sizes in Roswell, I just feel we're somewhat discriminating, not allowing the fire pits, below 3 feet diameter, below 2 feet height. So those are where my concerns are, and obviously, curious to hear this committee's thoughts on whether or not fire pits should be allowed on properties under an acre.
Other questions? Councilmember Judy?
So I guess I'm not quite understanding. 15 feet is from there to this step here.
To the step, yes.
Yeah, so people's houses, if they're 15 feet, you can put a fire pit there, how can that?
It says 25.
No, it's 15, right there, 15 feet.
Fireplace, fireplaces,
fireplace.
manufactured fireplace.
15 feet.
Fire pits are still 25.
Oh, fireplace is at 25.
Right.
And 25.
Okay, so
25 is from here, probably from here to the. That's
So
another
what
5
is a
feet.
manufactured fireplace versus a fire pit?
A fire pit would be a fire on the ground, typically surrounded by stones, bricks, concrete blocks. It'd be a fire pit, be on the ground.
Okay,
A manufactured fireplace would be a device you buy at Home Depot that is manufactured for fire, usually round, square, little chimeneas. That's a portable fireplace. Or so any of those devices that you would buy that you can put a fire in, they're designed for a fire.
so we are allowing fires on property 15 feet.
Yes.
We're just not allowing fire pits because fire pits are more dangerous based upon what you said about the smoldering.
They're allowed, but you have to have 25 feet to a combustible. And I'll have to disagree with Councilman Palermo that on a half-acre lot, you have plenty of, you have 25 feet easily to the lot line or to combustibles. I live on a half-acre lot, and I have a fire pit in the center, and I have probably 30 feet in all directions from mine. So I'm certain that there's probably certain configurations of the lot that would prohibit that, but for the most part, you can get 25 feet from a half-acre lot easily.
That was pre-UDC.
Pardon me?
That was before the UDC. The UDC setbacks have made it much smaller, which changed the configuration of the lots. So your house must have been built before 2014, of course?
I'm not in Roswell,
So is there, would you, well, that's state law, correct?
Yes, that's state law.
So that's state law, so there's nothing really we can do about that,
We have to enforce the minimum.
state law on that. Okay, so that's, because it's allowed 25 feet from structures 3 foot diameter, 2 foot fuel height, right?
Property line.
So the only thing that's different is the property line. So if we took out the property line, then it would be in line with state law.
You have the code.
So if we took out property line, I guess that kills the whole argument because we're then enforcing state law.
No, we're talking about fire pits.
Fire pits are 25. The fire pits for the International Fire Code are 25 feet from a structure, 3 feet in diameter, 2 feet high in fuel.
Okay, so property line was added to the proposed ordinance. So
Property line,
if we took property line out, it'd be in with state law. And that way we're following it anyway, so it might as well be in there.
we're trying to make it a little bit safer.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Thank you, and again, thanks for this information and walking us through it. I guess my question is a technicality, I guess, is the definition of a container that's shown after campfires and recreation fires. I mean, I can see, and it says no container, I can see a much greater danger in a campfire on an open lot that's 3 feet in diameter versus one that's contained within a stone structure. It would seem to me that just the way that that's built, there is some protection from it spreading just in that the very nature of the structure, whether it's a stone pit or fireplace.
So
So how do you distinguish between
you want to know
those
what a
two?
container is?
Correct.
Okay. Under the code, the definition of a container is a device that's approved by the authority having jurisdiction to burn in. I swear, that's what it is.
Well, in
Now,
that case,
he's the authority, the fire marshal is the authority having jurisdiction.
Right.
So technically, somebody could come up and say, hey, look, I have this container, will you approve me to burn in it? And he could look at it and say yes, or he could say no. That's the only thing the code says about that. It's very vague, we
Right.
understand that.
right,
What we would look at in that situation is go back and say, well, look at the commercially manufactured portable fireplace. Why can't you just burn in that? That's a container. You know, I know people they make things of their own, but we are not engineers, so how can we say that the material that they use, the thickness of the material, how do we know that that's gonna contain a fire if we're not engineers? You know what I mean? The manufactured fireplace is engineered by somebody. And so that one section there is a little bit sticky because it's up to the authority having jurisdiction, the fire marshal, to approve a container. And that puts a lot of liability on us to do that. So we would just suggest we'll go get a fireplace. But
right. Well, I guess the difference, I mean, to me, it would seem like a stone-built fireplace or a stone-built stone pit would, first of all, have more stability. I mean, I would look to you than a portable fireplace.
Most of the portable
And have some
fireplaces are
protections.
enclosed and have a cover, a lot of times made out of screen so that it keeps a lot of the embers in. And a open fire pit, there's no dampening the embers that come out of that.
Right. I guess I'm just a little confused about the definition there, campfires and recreation fires, no container. And if you're going to say that a stone fire pit or a stone fireplace is not a container, how do you define it?
that's the way the code's written.
Right, I
mean,
understand.
we're trying to adapt it and we're allowing it.
right.
We're allowing the container.
Right,
But we have to approve the container. And that's what the code says. The definition of it in the code book says that the authority having jurisdiction approves the container. And we're sitting there going, okay, well, we got to approve in a container, you know? But it's 15 feet, so because it's in a container, it gets closer to a combustible as opposed to the open pit. That's 25 feet. Is that where you're getting the confusion between the open pit and the container, or is the distance?
no, it's not not the distance, just the definition.
Yeah.
You know, a campfire that a Boy Scout builds with sticks out in the woods, I can see is a lot less safe than a stone fire pit that's built in someone's backyard on a patio with,
Well, when we say container, okay, that can be a cast iron metal cauldron, could be a container.
Right,
It could be something that somebody welds up. They weld up pieces of metal to make a big
right,
box
right,
that could be a container.
sure. So that could fall under the category of approved container.
Yes. Yeah.
Here's your answer, right?
Okay. Yeah. The thing is our approval of that container.
Right,
We
sure.
don't know if we'd be able to approve it or not.
Right, sure. Well, and that makes sense, that, you know, you would need to approve that it was built safely with the right safety features in it, so. I mean, to me, that's kind of a way to look at this, to look at those specific instances that Councilmember Palermo mentioned.
Okay.
Councilmember Zapata and then Tizer.
Thank you. So yeah, I was paying close attention to your presentation, and I see you mentioned two things at the beginning of your presentation: prevent fires and save lives.
That's correct.
So I have a simple question here, which is, do you believe that the state law and state code prevent fires and save lives?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
So just for fun, I wanted to see what our neighbor to the north is doing in Alpharetta. And they recently put out a Facebook post. It says, now that spring is here, many of you may be working on cleaning debris from your yard. We thought this would be a good time to remind Alpharetta residents about the City of Alpharetta's burn ordinance. The only type of outdoor burning allowed in Alpharetta must be in a fire pit or outdoor fireplace less than 3 feet in diameter. The fire pit or outdoor fireplace must be at least 25 feet away from structures and property lines. The link below gives you the entire ordinance, which I didn't read. And they go on to explain the following exceptions to the prohibition on outdoor burning. Outdoor burning in conjunction with preparation of food for immediate human consumption, campfires and fires used solely for recreational or ceremonial occasions, provided the burning is approved in advance by the fire department and conducted pursuant to such conditions that the fire department may require. It goes on to talk about burning for training of fire department, disposing of packaging materials, fires in recreational fire pits defined in the Unified Development Code and subject to size and location requirements. Such fires are required to be approved in advance by public safety and are not limited to cooking purposes. Fire pits must be attended at all times. Smoke from the fire pit that creates a nuisance is prohibited. A nuisance is defined as smoke that enters a neighboring home with windows and doors closed. The fire chief or his designee and the director of environmental services or his designee shall be responsible for the enforcement and may issue citations for the violation. Any person violating any provision of this section shall be fined not less than $50 nor more than $1,000 for each offense, and a separate offense shall be deemed committed on each day when the violation occurs. And they go on to talk about a few other things. So that's what our neighbor to the north does.
Paul.
Thank you, Gary. Do gas grills or any kind of cooking grills, open or closed, hibachis, do they fall in, which category do they fall under?
They fall into open flame cooking in a grill. And under 1 and 2 family dwellings, we have no restrictions on them because state law doesn't have restriction on them.
So they're not in this grid anywhere?
You can have them on your deck, you can have them, I mean, that's the state law. We wanted to put something in there to make that more restrictive, but figured that would be like shooting ourselves in the foot. So many people have those grills, and it would be very difficult for y'all to pass something like that. So we just stayed with the state law on that. As much as I personally disagree with that, but that's state law, and that's, we think is the best way to go for the city.
Because one of the examples you mentioned was the house that burned down because the grill was too close to the siding and burnt down the house. So those things happen.
They do happen often.
Thank you.
Councilmember Judy.
One quick question, then I'd like to make a motion, see if we can move on past this. Who determines the level of fine given? Is that the judge, or is that the fire marshal upon arrival?
The judge.
Okay.
We would take the citation to the judge, turn it in. When the court date comes up, the judge would hear the case and determine what the fine is. We have nothing to do with fines.
Okay. And is there a reason why you chose $1,000?
Pardon me?
Is there a reason why you chose $1,000 as the top fine?
We were being consistent with, for instance, our neighbors to the north.
And they were at 1,000?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to make a motion if that's all right, unless anybody else has any more conversation. I'm going to motion to, using this chart to basically follow state law on campfires and recreation fires, snow container, removing property line from the proposed ordinance. And on the commercially manufactured portable fireplaces, I'm okay with the 15 feet from the structure and non-combustible surface at 15 feet, because I believe that gives a chance for everybody to get it away from the house. Fine with the approved container, because that matches state law. Open flame and cooking grill, fine, same as match state law. Warming fires, fine with that. Flammable liquids, let's see, the one address, one fire per address, I'm fine with that. Required until extinguished, must have extinguished, fine with that. And the last one, up to, I'd like to move that to $500 fine. Liable for cost to extinguish the fire. And I'd like to lower the lower end to $25 to $500. And that's my motion. That's it.
You possibly condense that and clarify the motion a little bit?
I guess.
Or maybe just add, move forward with the following conditions.
Okay, move forward with the following conditions. I was just reading off the chart here then. Do you have a chart in front of you? Oh, okay. So everything's the same as state law. Except, and it's written here, except for in the number 2, campfires and recreation, remove property line.
That's it.
On the commercially manufactured portable fireplaces, the 15 feet. On both of those is fine. 15 feet, so I'm just looking for things I have a difference on. The only other one I have a difference on is the fine starting at $25 to $500.
Capped at 500.
Yes.
Do we have a motion on the floor to move forward with those conditions?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wilson. Any further questions or discussion? Mayor Henry?
I'm thinking that according to this, now I'm going to have to get rid of our gas grill and our green egg.
No.
Okay, so what are the requirements? Just help me with this? What are the requirements for an open flame cooking?
There are no requirements for an open flame cooking grill or smoker in a 1 and 2 family home.
You don't have to get rid of a thing.
Okay, I live in a townhouse, and there are 3 townhouses in the building, so I can no longer have a grill.
So the townhouses are separated by 2-hour firewalls, and they are considered 1 and 2 family dwellings because there's a 2-hour firewall in between them.
Okay, so I'm safe.
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
Got your back.
Thank you. You already got rid of my fire pit, now you're getting rid of my
No,
grill.
no, we wouldn't do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions or comments? All in favor, please raise your hands. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to Public Safety Police. Number 3, consideration of a resolution to submit an application for the fiscal year 2021 Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant in the amount of $19,350. Chief Conroy.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. This item is a request for the City of Roswell to apply for a grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance in the amount of $19,350 to partially fund the purchase of ballistic vests for law enforcement officers. This grant would provide funding for reimbursement of body armor for approximately 50 vests at the cost of $774 per vest in order to replace out-of-date, expired vests and to purchase new vests for new officers to our police department. These are uniquely fitted vests that must meet National Institute of Justice standards and must be made in America. These are the vests that we wear under our uniform shirts. The Roswell Police Department would oversee the grant's project implementation. On financial impact, the city is required to provide a 50% match, so the grant is in the amount of $19,350 with a match of $19,350 for a total of $38,700. And the required matching funds are available in the police department's operating budget.
Motion to approve?
Motion approved by Councilmember Palermo,
Second.
by Councilmember Tizer. Questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you so much.
That is the closing of the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting, and I believe we need to take a couple-minute break in between so we can flip the system. Okay, we're going to reconvene in a few seconds. For Tuesday, May 11th, 2021, the first item on that agenda is the approval of the minutes of the Administration, Finance, Recreation, and Parks Committee meeting for April 13th, 2021. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Approved by Councilmember Judy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wilsey. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. And unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to item number 2 under administration, consideration of an ordinance to authorize Fulton County to conduct an election on November 2nd, 2021, and runoff, if necessary, on November 30th, 2021, an amount not to exceed $373,617, and budget amendment 1001330-05-24-21 in the amount of $37,005.
I'm not going to pull anything up because it's pretty self-explanatory, unless you guys need to see some numbers. This is just, as you know, for our election, November 2nd. We do have to do a budget amendment that Finance did put in. We originally budgeted for $336,000. It is $373,000. I did want to also mention, because we had that resolution back in 2019 with Fulton County, even though we have a referendum, a Fulton County referendum on the ballot, they are still doing it by registered voter, so it doesn't matter that we have a countywide election or not. Sometimes, it used to be if you had a countywide election, it might make our costs a lot less, but because we're doing it by registered voter. If you all want to know, the election in 2019 wound up costing us $201,204. Originally, it was $335,000, and then we got a refund from it. So I don't know if we'll have a refund or not, but I don't know if you have any questions.
Floor is open. Mayor?
I would like to say that in the past, the mayors in Fulton County have argued with Fulton County regarding the elections, and we have prevailed in the past. And you are correct. Now they're saying, I believe it's $2.73 per registered voter is what they're going to charge us for elections. I could be a little fuzzy on that, but
They actually have a little bit more.
is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Okay.
have it at $2.96.
Okay, 296.
Yeah.
So basically, in our mayor's meetings with Fulton County, we're not agreeing. And we've got a couple of avenues we can take. We can fight Fulton County on this. I believe there is one commissioner that's proposing that Fulton County take on elections, period, and that they don't charge the cities, now that Fulton County has virtually no unincorporated area and a large budget to spend. But then also the other thing that we need to, and I would like this council to consider, is that if we went to our state legislators and ask them to allow us to contract with other counties. So, for example, we wouldn't be tied to Fulton County. We would have the opportunity to contract with Cherokee County, for example, which would give us the opportunity to compare prices. So but that would take a state election law change, and I think that we could move in that direction. But also, I just wanted to let you know that the mayors of Fulton County are arguing with Fulton County about this, and we've got at least one commissioner that is willing to propose that Fulton County foot the bill for elections and the cities not be charged. So I just wanted to give an update on that.
Thank you. So this amount contemplate already how many early voting locations and how many
They
days?
haven't totally decided on the early voting. I think we'll know some more sometime in June is what they said. But they are, one of the reasons for the cost is that there's going to be an increase in the early voting sites, but we haven't seen a list or anything yet at this point.
Okay, because I remember one year we were discussing to open only one location by the library here and not East Roswell Library? We're going to this discussion, so I don't want
I'm
this
going
happening.
to definitely assume that we're definitely going to have one, at both libraries, like we always have. I don't think we'll have less than two. We might wind up with another one. I don't know, since they did say that they are going to be increasing early voting sites. I just don't know yet.
And the number of days remain
For
the
early
same?
voting, it'll
Correct.
still be 3 weeks.
Okay.
It can be up to 3 weeks by the state, and Fulton County's always chosen to do the 3. They might decide to, and I think they can also decide if they're gonna have like 2 weekends of early voting. Like I said, I don't think a lot of that has been totally decided. Fulton County's not always really quick
Okay.
with answers.
But will not provide less service for more money, right? That, we have to make sure that
Right.
we're not gonna pay more for less service in terms of number of days open for early voting and number of location open for early voting.
Yeah, one of the other things they did say that there might be an increase in the amount of precincts on election day. I don't know if that's going to include here in Roswell. Like I said, they haven't really been too forthright at this point, so.
And let me just piggyback on that. Fulton County has us over a barrel. They dictate to us what our costs are going to be, what's going to be open, what isn't going to be open, when early voting starts, when it ends. All of it is up to Fulton County, and they are saying to the city of Roswell and the other cities that it is not our prerogative to even negotiate on that. However, what I was saying earlier is we, as a collected group of cities, do have negotiation power and can pursue that. But Fulton County is saying you don't have a choice.
So Mayor, and Marley, when do we have to make a decision on this? Should we sit back and wait on mayor's meetings before we send this to council and see where we are? Is there a drop dead date of us approving this?
We usually have to have the contract signed by July 1st, by the end of June. Now, last year we wound up going, 2 years ago, we wound up going later because we were going through all, and I don't think we signed it almost till the end of August. So.
Well, my point is if it saves us money and we are still in negotiations, then I think we should wait on this, if that's what the rest of the council and the mayor thinks.
We should definitely wait till the last minute to confirm the contract, but still, even if we do confirm the contract, we do have negotiating power.
Yes, so could we defer to the next admin meeting at the 1st of June and then be able to get to council by the second meeting in June and be able to still make June 30th or June 1st? July 1st? I mean, and that would still.
we do have 2 readings of the ordinance, so it would take 2 meetings.
You don't have to come back to committee.
To the next committee?
No, you don't have to come back to committee.
Okay.
If you need to.
And maybe I'll try to get more answers, and I don't know if there's another mayor's meeting between
Right,
now and
right.
then.
Right. I'd like to make a motion to defer pending what happens at the mayor's meeting and with other negotiations. And at your discretion to bring back, can we do that, whether it's committee or council?
I think we should be able to bring it back to council, rather than go to committee and then,
You don't have to go back to committee.
that's what I'm saying, just take it straight to council.
Yeah, and if you would, just back into it. So
Right.
what is our drop dead date? And then just back into it, so that gives us as much leeway as possible.
Okay,
Perfect.
all right.
There's a motion to defer indefinitely on the floor. Is there a second? Second by the mayor. Any questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands. Unanimous, thank you. Consideration of a road closure of Canton Street from Magnolia to Norcross Street for Alive after 5:15, private organizer, on June 17th, 2021. Ms. Ward.
Thank you. Good evening. The organizer is requesting a road closure of Canton Street from Norcross to Magnolia, Elizabeth Way at Highway 9, and East Alley at Norcross and Highway 9 for an event called Alive After 5:15, and it will be held on Thursday, June 17th from 5:30 to 9:30. Currently, they have stated they will not be advertising the event besides what each individual business owner or restaurant will be putting out. They are not agreeing to provide additional porta potties. They feel they can provide enough restrooms inside their restaurants. There is no additional seating outside. They state they have well over 3,000 seats collectively, so there's no need for seating or chairs or anything outside on the roads. And they do not want vendors. They want to draw people inside to their establishments. So I just wanted to read a brief part of her email so that I'm not speaking out of turn. She said, I want to reiterate that we, as business owners on Canton Street, do not want vendors or sponsors, and we only want this to be a community event for our community. So no advertising will be done besides what the business owners do. We don't expect a huge crowd, as it will mostly be residents. All of the restaurants agreed we don't want to put tables outside as we have enough seats. Previously, when we did a live after 5, we never needed the porta potties due to there being enough internal restrooms. They are aware that Alive in Roswell is beginning back on July 15th. Staff is unsure of the need for the road closure because that would impact the traffic during that time, particularly if they're not really utilizing the road for anything other than just overflow from their restaurants. Additionally, this being the very first large-scale event on Canton Street and actually in Roswell for over a year, we feel that the crowd could be very large, and they would treat this like an Alive after 5. I don't know if they would differentiate between it since it's the same thing as a third Thursday. So we would recommend, if we do the road closure, that we would staff it like we do Alive in Roswell with 13 police, 7 recreation and parks, and 3 transportation. I did speak with her about that, and she said that would not be an issue financially. Are there any questions?
I don't know if you're aware of this, or what I've heard is that there's an informal Alive After 5 that's been going on anyway in the area. Has that affected or had any negative effects?
Not to my knowledge. I know that the chief's aware of it. We're aware of it on social media. I guess we would need to ask the chief if there's been any impact police-wise. We are aware that it's out there floating around on social media. This is a different organizer than that, from what I can kind of figure out by just looking at the social media.
Just from my perspective, I think it's a great idea if we could help support it. People are starving for community and connection after everything that we've been through, so that's what I'd like to say.
Councilor Judy.
So, are they required to carry insurance, the organizer of this event? Yes.
They will be required to have a COI. The city is named in that for $1 million.
For $1 million.
It'll be like any other permitted event we do. They'll have to fill out their COVID waivers. They'll have to come in for a pre-event meeting. We will recommend and tell them that they need porta potties based upon the crowd that we foresee coming. So we're basing this upon what we, as my liaisons in police, in transportation, in recreation and parks, how they feel this event will go.
So my feeling on this, as long as it's treated as a proper event, proper insurance, proper police, proper bathrooms, proper, rec and parts, and it's taken care of by the private organizer, then I could look at supporting this. But I want to make sure that we have all safety elements in place, being that, you don't want something bad to happen at an event in the middle of Roswell. So I think from a staff perspective, I would like assurance that all I's are dotted and T's are crossed, which I'm sure they will be, but, and that everything's being paid by the private organizer. And if that happens, then I believe I can support it.
So in a pre-event meeting, we don't give the permit out until we sit down with the organizer and go through the COVID packet, the setup, what they will be responsible for, make sure the COIs and everything are in place. So we don't ever permit it until we've literally physically sat down with them to go through everything.
One more quick question, and do we have support, or does it seem like we have unanimous support from the businesses on Canton Street that will be impacted by the street closure?
She has said she's spoken to all of the businesses in that section. You know, I don't really go out and follow up on somebody who says that, but in her email, she said she's spoken to all of them and they all are behind it.
All right, I'd like to do a little research on that as well. All right, thank you.
Mayor Henry. Mayor, did you have a question?
The organizers can't pick and choose what we require, is that correct? So if we have an event, they're required to do the police, they're required to have transportation, they're required for our sanitation workers to take care of garbage, and they're also required to have porta potties, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and they are willing to pay for that?
yes.
And the hours of closure are?
Well, they'll be 5:30 to 9:30. However, and this is something else we need to speak with them about, as you know, when we do Alive in Roswell, we found over the years we can't open it right back up at that time due to the crowd. So the police watch the crowd and then they open when it's safe and appropriate to open. So they will be, the organizer will be responsible for those extra hours that our staff is still there as well.
Well, and what I'm concerned about are the other establishments on Canton Street. When you close Canton Street, it disrupts their business. So I'm not as concerned about it if it's after hours, but if we're going to close Canton Street during normal business hours, I've got a problem with it
So the
because,
closure will be 5:30 to 9:30.
okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think my concern is also the support from the business community on Canton Street. And so a question about process. Approval here takes it to a regular council meeting, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there was plenty of time to socialize and get some good public opinion and hear from the business.
They wanted to do it in May, and
Right.
I told them we just couldn't turn that around quick enough. So
Right,
we
right.
settled on us doing it now and then coming back, and we'll have plenty of time.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Can I make a comment on
Sure.
this? Keep in mind, all we're doing is asking for approval for the road closure. This is not a city event. This is a private event with a private organizer that is doing all of this. Chris and her folks will not be involved. This is just like any other event. The only reason that it's here is because they're requesting a road closure, and with it being on Canton Street, that's a road closure that the chief or the transportation director wouldn't just do on their own. They can on the minor ones, but that's what we're here tonight for, and what we'll move forward is whether or not approval to close the road, but it is not a city event.
Right, but it's not a city event, but from what you said, we would still provide police officers and.
No, they
Parks and
pay for the
Recs.
police officers.
They will pay for them,
We tell
right.
them what they need to have an event in the city. But if there's issues that go on and if there's problems with the event, they don't have a Chris to turn to during the event. Whereas in Alive in Roswell, she's there with the presence and she's there organizing that event. So this organizer will answer, if 100 people show up or 5,000,
Sure.
that organizer's going to have to deal with that. If with the road being closed, there could be a large crowd. And I don't know, but yes, she'll have to do whatever the city says pre-planning. Here's what you're going to have to do, and she's going to have to do that.
Right,
But it's not an Alive in Roswell.
right.
It's just handled like a permitted, like we handle all of our permitted events, same format that we do with everybody.
Correct.
So, given that staff has taken all these safety precautions and communicated the requirements within the city, and given the timeline, knowing this has to come to council, I'd like to make a motion that we move this forward to council, and that would give us the opportunity to confirm that there is support by those affected businesses, because even if we vote for this to move forward tonight, this council could have the opportunity to not support it at the council meeting if there's concerns or opposition. So for that reason, I'd like to motion to move this to council.
Motion moved forward by Councilmember Palermo. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Judy. Any further questions or discussion? Councilmember Spada.
Thank you. So yeah, between now and then, will be good to require signature from all the restaurants who are in this section that is gonna be closed. So, because, he or she said that they're okay, but, well, I mean, we want to cover, so it will be good to require a signature of all the restaurants in this area that are gonna be closed, if they're in agreement.
I can request
Because
that
if
from
they're
the
not,
organizer.
then it's a big issue then.
Sure.
Thanks.
Questions or comments? All in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Item number 5, item number 4, COVID-19 Relief Assistance Program for Residents and Small Businesses update. Mr. Fisher.
Well, good evening. This is an update for the business portion, particularly of the COVID-19 relief program that we did. If you remember back in February, you all allocated $800,000 for the city to do some COVID relief, $400,000 for residents and $400,000 for local businesses with a maximum of 99 employees. The residential side is being handled by North Fulton Community Charities, and that's still ongoing. They're still managing that internally within their operations. The city of Roswell has handled the business portion, and I want to give you an update on that now. If you remember, we had some tiers where it was a $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000 grants, depending on the number of employees that the businesses had. We received 79 applications in total. What you'll see here and for the remaining slides is off by 1, because as far as yesterday, we were still working with one remaining business for some clarification, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But they did get approved for $5,000, so that notification went out today. So we actually have $200,000 and 31 grants that were approved, and 48 grants and $360,000 that was not approved. Just to let you know a little bit about how we promoted this, I'm not going to go through all of these, but there were thousands of contacts that were made at the beginning of this to get as many applications as we got, and we thought that was very successful through the press releases, through the stories we did, through the e-blast. This is a whole nother page, basically the social media side of it, and you can see the contacts that were made and some of the likes and the followings that we got on the Facebook pages. So tremendous effort. I think one of the biggest efforts we've ever had in getting out the information. Roswell Inc., Visit Roswell put it out on their stuff too. So we had a lot of reaches on this particular program. So here's kind of a breakdown. There was actually 24 at the $5,000 range for 120. There was 5 that got the $10,000 range, and there was 2 that got $15,000 total. These were the requirements that we had listed that you all worked with when we first started the program out. The businesses couldn't receive the federal grants. There was the EIDL loan, which was okay if they were getting a loan, because ultimately they have to pay that back. Maximum of 99 employees, business license, that they didn't know the city anything. Revenues of less than $1 million, 25% decrease in what they brought in from 19 to 20. Had to be a Roswell residence. We got some applications that were not. And then just a kind of a commitment to let us know that, hey, we're going to be around for the next 12 months. So here's kind of a breakdown of what didn't get approved. And that very first one is the one that we were looking at with the business that got approved today. So that's actually 24 for that first one. But that was the biggest one of the bunch. It was the 25% loss, which says that there wasn't maybe as big of a loss as we thought, maybe for some of our businesses. but they had to be over 25% loss, and 24 of them were not. We got 9 that weren't in the city, or weren't in business in 2019. Of course, you can't show that it was COVID-related if they weren't in business the year before to start with. A couple people didn't own the business in 2019. And you'll see some of the other, 2 of them didn't have, or had revenue over $1 million. So 2 of them weren't located in Roswell. This was a huge effort to go through these applications like we did. Our committee, by the way, was absolutely phenomenal in meeting and working through this. Patrick Baber was on the committee, Michael Cardman from ComDev, Karen Zittimer, Harpreet, myself, Ryan Luckett were sat on the review committee, and we went through several iterations. The first time I think we actually sat down and went through it, there were 2 applications out of 79 that we said, golly, they meet everything, they gave us everything we wanted, they're approved. 77 of those, we had to go back and ask for clarification. They didn't provide the information that was one of the requirements. Some of them did multiple times. We were trying to give away the money, and ultimately we got half of it given away. But Karen Swinehart was absolutely phenomenal with her organization, with her communication. She was kind of our person that we pushed everything to for the communication. And I can tell you, we could not have gotten through this without that organization that she did. So with this, just to let you know, there's $200,000 remaining. We gave away the $5,000. Like I said, we would let that person know this afternoon. So we're here today to let you know that there's $200,000. That money's in the general fund, still in the general fund. It hasn't gone anywhere. But to let you know that it's there, and you can provide recommendations or direction on how you want to spend that money, whether we try something else or it goes to a capital or maintenance we've been talking about earlier, whatever you want to do with that. But with the outreach that we had, without really changing up the program, I think we got the people that were interested in those 79 applications because they knew about it. So I'm not sure what to do with the other 200,000, and that's up for recommendations this evening. Any questions?
Floor is open.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Thank you for doing this, and to the committee for all the work that you've done. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure it was interesting, too, to get to know some of the small businesses in Roswell, and they're very grateful. Question, do you by any chance have a breakdown of like the types of businesses they were, like what types of industries or fields they were in?
I do not. I mean,
we have
a master database where we put their names down on what they were, but I mean, you could tell by the names. Some of them you can't tell by the names, but to get into what breakdown of what kind of businesses we were, some of them we have no idea.
Right. Okay. I think one of our concerns early on was the revenue number, the $1 million cap, and that might exclude some small businesses that were selling, high dollar items.
Right.
So even though, their sales might have been over $1 million, that didn't mean that their gross receipts or whatever their profits were where they had been. So I don't know if that's something that we might want to look at. But I'd like to know what industries or what fields actually submitted applications, and then would also like to know for the 25% revenue loss, what was the range? Where did they fall? Were they close to 25%? Were they?
No, there were some. There were some that made money.
That made money,
right?
Right.
20 than
Sure.
they did in 19.
Sure.
But they applied anyway. So I can tell you that was all over the board.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
It was interesting to
Okay.
see some of these.
Right.
But
I mean, I guess those are two things I would like to look a little closer at. Yeah.
Councilmember Palermo.
So as Councilman Judy will walk us through later today, there's a discussion about an incentive for specifically around the way I read it was basically helping companies hire and creating incentives for really job creation. I think some of the details of it, in the packet that Councilman Judy put together, there's some aspects where there's something from Alpharetta. I think it does need some tweaks. For example, I think something that should be a part of it is really full-time jobs, and that's something I'd like to discuss. But overall, I think that's a very targeted way to actually help businesses, help residents. And so, and obviously that's not currently funded since it's first coming to committee today. But what I'd like to actually discuss is some, if not all of this, considered possibly going towards that. Again, knowing that I think it does need some, in my opinion, needs some work from ways to improve it from the Alpharetta one. But again, I like the idea of being more targeted. So one idea is that some or the majority of this money goes towards that. The other one is really a question for this council on are there some different macro ways to help a number of businesses. So for example, if what we're finding is that having that Thursday night closed off, since a business owner is saying that other business owners in there, it will help them and be beneficial, are there other things that the city could invest in that is, whether it's an event or whether it's anything different, but it's helping many businesses instead of just one? I think that's something I'd love to hear some brainstorming and some creativity around as well.
Well, I would go back to Councilmember Judy's proposal that we'll hear about later this evening, and which is creating jobs for Roswell citizens in Roswell businesses. And I think that that's very targeted. I will say, and I know that there are other folks that can talk about this up here, but right now there is just so much federal money that's floating around out there. I really feel as though for us to take a more targeted approach dealing with creating jobs in Roswell and hiring Roswell residents, I think that would be key for this. It's $200,000, and we have already committed to providing that for businesses, so I think it would be a perfect fit.
That's one of the things that we, you don't know what you don't know. We don't know how many just didn't apply because they've already gotten federal funding, and the federal funding may have been a lot more than what we were given anyway. So it's that's what was hard to tell.
So I think I agree with Councilman Judy and the other speakers today. I think y'all have done a great job advertising the program. I think anybody who was going to apply has applied, and I think this part of the program is closed. And I think to move it to 13 or some version of item 13 here that Councilmember Judy is going to bring forward is a reasonable thought for how to deal with it.
No, not right now, just a discussion, so we'll stay tuned to number 13 and see what happens. Thank you all for allowing us to do this. It was very interesting time.
Moving on, item number 5, consideration of a community development block grant, coronavirus round 3, scoring recommendations.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So going into that federal funds just flowing around here, this is a resolution for our 2020 Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Round 3 funds. The application was closed on March 15th, 2021. We received 10 proposals requesting over $695,000. We only have $376,000 available. Again, this is the funds that were awarded to help prevent, respond to, or prepare for, or respond to the coronavirus. But it has to be for low to moderate income persons, just like the regular CDBG funds. So we took those 10 proposals, we reviewed them, scored them back in April using the formula that Mayor and Council decided on, I think it was June 2020. And so we have recommended 7 for approval, and we used a top-down scoring method just the highest scoring proposals, and we scored from the top down until the funds ran out. I believe you have that in your packet. Here to answer any questions you have.
Floor is open. Councilmember Palermo.
So thank you for providing this info. I guess I'm having some deja vu where we spent a lot of time, and you mentioned it was June 2020. It didn't feel that long ago, but I can't believe it's been almost a year. But basically, we used to always have a process that was always unanimous, and then the last few years it changed, and it turned this into always consistently going from a smooth, unanimous process back, 4 years ago to consistently being a lot of disagreement. So I guess just help me understand, I thought we had changed the process to get it more similar to like it was before, and now it seems like it's reverted back. So just help me understand what this process was.
So for this process, we did a scoring committee, and then I notified you guys via email about a week in advance about what we were going to be recommending. The reason we didn't give it longer is just because of the timing, and because the 2021 CDBG funds, we actually sent those out for mayor and council to approve, and we didn't get any scores back, and no comments, and had no questions at committee or council. So,
But that one, you gave the option, it sounds like you got no responses, and that one went to committee, went to council, and it passed, correct?
right.
Right, and so that seems to me like if there was no comment, it looks like everybody was supporting and agreeing with what the makeup was, and I would have expected to see. I think it's really important that if we see a process that doesn't work well, we improve that process, and it works. We don't revert back to the previous process, where it seems to me like we've reverted back to the previous process. So what I would expect here is, even realizing the time is limited, that whenever you got this information, whenever you had these applications in, that it would have came to council, there would have been the opportunity for mayor and council to weigh in, and then it would create a much smoother process, just really having those weightings from mayor and council. So I guess I'm just a little disappointed that the process reverted back.
If you want to establish like a set lead time, we can go ahead and put that in place. That it was kind of arbitrary last time. I think for the first CV funds, we did 3 weeks or something like that for you guys to score. We did over a month for the 2021 CDBG. I didn't get any scores or comments back, so I just kind of assumed it had fallen the wayside. So if you want to establish it as a month or 3 weeks, I'll be glad to work that into whatever timeline going forward that you guys want.
Excellent.
A chance to review.
Yeah, no, and I'd say I'm comfortable with whatever you recommend as that lead time. Is just having the opportunity. I think one of the factors probably ends up being number of applications, et cetera. If I remember correctly, that one had fewer applications, so there was less competition. If anything, it seemed like the available funds were a lot closer to the requested funds, which obviously makes it a lot easier. But that's where when I was looking at this, I felt I definitely needed a lot more detail and really need to understand this, because I do see some different needs that perhaps there was good reason to not score it high, perhaps there wasn't, and I don't know, and I don't think, if I don't know, I think certainly the community does not know. So what's the timeline on when this needs to be officially voted in? Because obviously the last thing we want to do is risk losing these funds for these great organizations. What is the last possible deadline to be able to submit this?
Well, there's proposals up here that are ready to start tomorrow, and we gave them till December 31st, 2021 to spend the funds.
So meaning, I guess actually, so let me rephrase that. So do we already have the CDBG money, and we're not at risk of losing that money? Is that correct?
Yes, it was, it's been awarded to us. We haven't signed the mayor hasn't signed the letter, because we have to still submit a plan to HUD, and they have up to 45 days to approve that plan. We have to basically do a revision to our 2021 or 2020 CDBG annual action plan, and they'll have 45 days for that, but they haven't not approved anything that I've ever known, but it can take them up to 45 days.
Okay. So with that, again, there's not much information on here. Council hasn't had a chance to weigh in and rate, because again, maybe this is the scoring and the ranking that all mayor and council would agree on. Maybe it's different, but ultimately, I think we owe the community to know what are all these great applications and projects from all these great organizations, and council weighing in on making sure that all the that the funding is being prioritized in the right way. So from that standpoint, I think we just need a lot more information. We need to defer this to a committee ASAP, but again, with the detailed information that we've seen in the past, because again, in 2016, 2017, it was a smooth, unanimous process. It got rocky for a bit, but I think we have the opportunity to really make sure that we're understanding this and being able to explain it to the community.
One of the things that I would like to make certain of is that when staff establishes a process, council follows it. And if they come back to us, which they did last year, and asked for our input, and they were not given any input, to me, that's a message to staff to say, we're not really looking at it, or we're good with it, but we don't have time to let you know we're good with it, or whatever the case may be. So my challenge to the council is, if you want to set up these parameters for staff, I agree with that completely, but you've got to hold up your end of the bargain.
Councilmember Spada.
Thank you. So, yeah, following the point made by Councilmember Palermo, I remember 2016, 17, we were given like an Excel sheet with all the projects, a description for us to score. This was 16, 17, my first 2 years in office. Then we moved to some other process. Then we talked about it. I guess we came an agreement, sort of, I believe. So you either develop or hire a website specializing in, which we have some glitch on the website trying to move on and save and send it. I don't know I don't remember at this point we went back to Excel sheet or not. So now we are not in the, it will be great to have a little bit of consistency, a little bit. So I think the last time we agreed, when you came with a great idea, hey, let's use this software that specializes on grants approval and rating and scoring. So I don't know, we have some glitches there, but I don't know if this could be resolved or this was unresolvable, so we just move out of there. So if you can explain a little bit, because it's very, very confusing and very, very lack of consistency on this process of the grant. So if you can explain to us, or I don't know if we need to come with a clear policy so it's not confusion in the future, and it's only one way to do it. Because again, I see here some of them, like a Roswell Recreation and Parks, asking for $130,000 for adult recreation center covered pavilion, which, if we don't use this money, we will need to use Roswell taxpayers' money to do it eventually, because if it's here, it's needed and need to get done soon or later, and sooner than later. So if we don't fund this with these funds, this means we have to use Roswell taxpayers' money to fund this one day. So I will definitely, if it's not a technical problem with the Roswell Recreation and Parks request, I will definitely like to move it up so we can save Roswell taxpayers' money to work on the adult recreation center covered pavilion. So, so if we have time, I think that we can totally probably go back and rate this, and with the software, if it works now, or let's go back to Excel of the 2016, 17 years, that when everybody can weigh in based on the information provided on the file. So those are my concerns.
Right, so we've been using Zoom grants for a long time. Zoom grants got overrun with all the coronavirus CDBG funds. Everybody opened up that application the same day, so it was very lagging when you guys went in to score the 2020 round one CV funds. It was really lagging, so we got some complaints with that. Some of the applicants, it was just slowing down. And so the next round, I created a spreadsheet similar to the old system, and I put in all the request for proposals, and I sent you guys a link to where you could find all the details if you wanted. I pulled all that out of Zoom grants. What we did for round 3 is I sent you guys an email, and it had the same link. We pulled all the data down out of Zoom grants. Zoom grants is still iffy right now. We didn't have any problem in the application process, but since you guys were familiar with the Excel spreadsheet format, and that's the feedback, with the exception, I think Councilmember Wilsey is the only one that used Zoom grants to score the applications back in the 2020 CV. So I did the Excel spreadsheet again, and I sent that to you guys in an email if you wanted to score them for yourself. And I also provided a link to the full applications. There's a PDF there that had all the narratives and the budgets and timelines. And then there was a link back to the full support documentation if you had any questions for that. So it was similar to the exact same process we used last time. We just didn't use Zoom grants because of the technical difficulties. As far as the timeline, that's something we can, if you want longer lead time for everything, standard lead time, I can do that. In regards to the Rec and Parks project, it just, it didn't score quite as well because it was a bit of a, overall, it was sort of a bit of a stretch for what the coronavirus funds are being used for in terms of, the idea was to build a pavilion so you could do outdoor activities for senior citizens. It was just a bit of a stretch, and the optics of that compared to some of the other applications, it just didn't score as well because of that reason.
Thank you. Just my question is, so you sent the email to City Council and nobody on City Council responded?
I sent you guys an email, either at the beginning last week, and I didn't get a response back from you guys. But then also the 2021 CDBG funds, we sent that out and a reminder via email, and I didn't get any response whatsoever from you guys.
I would just ask if you could just include Jana in the emails, because it's unusual that not one of 7 of us would. I'm looking through the emails, and I apologize. I mean, you know how passionate I am about the grants, but the last email I have regarding round 3 is on December 22nd, where you indicate that you would ask us in February and March to help score it. And then we did get the email last week that here's the scores and here's what we did. So that, I'm just perplexed.
Thank you. So, but again, the email that came out on Monday, so it was last week, it was not asking for our scoring or input like we had agreed on improving the process back to it last year. This was just saying, hey, this is what we're doing. Let me know if you have any questions. And so that's a concern I have. And the other question I have is regarding the Roswell Park and Recs item. Is it something where it's illegal in a misuse of funds, or more of just the staff scoring committee just didn't prefer it? I guess just help me understand that.
It would have been borderline. We could have been caught out on it, questioned.
Well, called out meaning somebody
HUD.
disagreeing with a choice, or called out saying you are misappropriating funds?
Misappropriating funds from HUD, saying that that's not a legitimate reason. There also, HUD doesn't provide a lot of guidance for scoring or doling out funds, but they do talk about sort of the cost of the next alternative. And so that's one of those that just kind of, it's hard to hold up for these emergency type funds, that you want to get people outside to do exercises, so you're going to build a $130,000 pavilion. The next alternative, you could potentially, I guess, do a tent or something. I know that's not kosher for Roswell, but that is possible. So HUD would look at it like that and go, did you really need to build this building for what you're going to use it for? That was the concern.
And that's where my thought is, I would expect it wouldn't be submitted unless they would just respond to HUD saying they're not allowed to do a tent here, which would be accurate information. But also, isn't Easter Seals, I thought they were based in Alpharetta. Are they based in Roswell?
Easter Seals is actually downtown, but they have 2 centers in Roswell. They have one on Mansell and one on Old Warsaw.
Okay. Gotcha, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Gary, and thank you, Charles. I just kind of, for the record, just want to point out that you did send out on Monday, May 3rd, a very thoughtful, well-organized email asking for our input. It contains all the project narratives, and it has an Excel calculator where if we put in numbers, it adds them up for us. So, and it's asking for us, for our response. I mean, I opened it, I read it, I flipped through it, I looked at the calculator, and I said, I'll get to it at the end of the week, and I didn't. That's on me. I mean, I think all of us had access to the same communication, so I want to thank you. If we need to work on lead time and do something, somewhere where we're getting hit on the head a little more to get the information to you, then, maybe that's something we can work in the process. But I do want to commend you for the work that you did in communicating with us. Thank you.
Looking for a motion to approve, but need more time to discuss them. We can get to the next committee or something.
I'd like to motion to defer this to the next committee, giving the opportunity for council to provide any input. Because again, when I read the email, but the email just said, please feel free to email me with your scoring calculators prior to the committee. But the problem is, it doesn't go into it. So the issue is that the score from council used to actually matter, whereas I believe with this, I guess I just don't understand. The process just seems very different than the old smooth process we used to have.
I will second the motion.
Motion on the floor to defer, and a second by Councilmember Spada.
And a question.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Councilmember Spada.
Thank you. So what about the Housing Authority of Roswell?
They withdrew their.
That was something that didn't qualify for this kind of grant? They had 0 score there?
Their proposal, it's got the little asterisk down there. The proposal was withdrawn before we scored it. They,
And do you know what was the reason?
Karen Parrish called and just asked to withdraw it. What they had applied for, they ended up, I think, getting additional funds for, and so they didn't need it any longer.
They didn't need more money?
Not for the project they applied for.
Ah, okay,
They ended up funding it some other way,
great, thank you.
so she wanted to withdraw it.
Did you second that motion, Councilmember Spada? Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to defer to second. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hands.
Okay.
You have a question, Councilmember?
Yeah, just a question, and I guess if it's being deferred, I guess we could discuss it next time, but I definitely want to learn more about the scoring for the vaccination equity program, because I've been reading actually that regarding vaccination rates, that there really is some equity concerns, and that being something affecting the health. And there might be, again, a justified reason why it's so low, but I think that's something that just council needs to certainly understand before moving this forward. But,
Any
yeah,
other
I'm
questions
fine
or
with it.
comments? Councilmember Tizer? All in favor, please raise your hands. Motion to defer. And, sorry, can you raise your hands again? I didn't get all that. The motion carries. Thank you. Thanks, Charles. Item number 6, discussion to hire a firm to scope out and advocate federal funding opportunities. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. So this is just for discussion to try to get some input from you all. As you know, the federal funding opportunities are about to grow exponentially. There's about $1.9 trillion that's been provided by the federal government for all these different COVID virus recovery efforts and the American Rescue Plan. Out of that, about $350 billion is for states and local governments. We seeing where we're going to get around $11 million that we know we're going to get. That's a direct distribution to the city. However, there's billions of dollars that are going to be out there that's going to be competitive dollars from all of the different government agencies that are out there. So our question to you is there interest in finding a firm that is familiar with these processes, familiar with these agencies, that you think it would be worthwhile to try to go out and procure to help us, to advocate for us, we envision meeting with the firm to find out what projects we have, what needs we have. They in turn can identify through their relationships what dollars are out there and how to better write the request for those other funds that are out there. So that's something that's available. We can find that. If you're interested in doing that, I know that in the budget reading last night, we do have a grant a professional that's in this first reading of the budget. We'll see what happens with that, but this is an immediate need, and it's something that we could do on a retainer-type basis if you're interested in looking at that. I would assume, I suspect that this firm would ultimately pay for themselves with the dollars that they bring in, but we wanted to talk, open that discussion up first.
Open. Councilmember Spada.
Thank you. Well, I think it's a good idea, but my question here is going to be a fixed cost or a variable cost, this $75,000 to $100,000? Regardless if they found $0 for us, we have to pay. So, because, you know, as a small business owner, I rather have million times variable cost versus fixed cost. So let's say, you know, they can get a percentage. If they find something for us, they get a percentage. If they find $0 for us, they get $0. So is this going to be a fixed cost or a variable cost to find the potential grants?
It would be a fixed cost because there's so much other work that they're going to be doing, whether they get the competitive grants from some of these agencies or not. They're still going to be meeting here. They're still going to be putting their resources and their hours into the work to find out what our needs are, what kind of programs we're looking for. Then they're in turn are going to go out and look for those and help us write the grants. So it would be a fixed cost, or at least some type of an hourly retainer where we would be billed for. It would not be a percentage of what they receive.
Is there any chance to negotiate a mix of that, maybe to cover some initial fixed cost that they have to interview and find out, et cetera, versus later? Because then, again, you know, if they come out and say, you know, I'm so sorry, but, you know, you don't qualify, or the money's gone, or whatever, then say, oh, you know, too bad, we just invested $100,000. So is any way to tie it up to performance or finding something for us, a minimum of, then will trigger the payment? I mean, some sort of, you know, tied to performance. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm here tonight, to just try to find out what you're interested in, what your discussions would be. Generally speaking, it's more of a retainer type thing with some of these firms, but absolutely that can be part of the discussion. So absolutely, yes.
Thank you. So normally I probably would not be in favor of something like this, but there is so much out there and such a level of complexity going on. And just as a simple example, just trying to learn how come we get 12.6 million and Johns Creek gets, you know, whatever that number is, 22 or 24 million, and trying to find the answers internally, because, you know, none of us are experts at this, and you know, there's very few experts at this point. So in this particular case, I think it's a good idea for us to get somebody out there to go look and help find these things. Once they've found them, they can turn them back over to our grant writers or whoever else needs to process them. But I think we've already seen that there's money out there that can come to us, specifically as it relates to the Rec and Park, a sand company situation. Who knows how much more there is? This is all competitive. You know, sure, it comes as the mayor has shared with me, you know, may come with strings. We don't even know what, you know, we don't know what those are until we can identify them. So from my standpoint, you know, a small amount of money to see if we can land multiples of that seems important to me. Do I care whether it's on a fixed retainer, on an hourly, or on a contingency? I think you have to find out from the firms involved how that might work. I'm open to any of those three. But in this case, this is a highly unique situation that we're in right now. And my concern is if we don't move relatively quickly, you know, those that have already done this will get there before us. Just my thoughts.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Michael, for bringing this forward. I'm actually really on the fence on this. I work for a consulting firm, and this is what we do, but I've seen a lot of very aggressive people out there making a lot of promises that really are not correct. I'm just wondering if there's something through GMA. Most of these programs are sister cities. I think we'll know and have information about most of the programs. Maybe there's some under the radar type of program. And if we could have some kind of contingency fee agreement, something like that, of course, I think that'd be a great idea, but the resources with GMA may be a good place to tap into.
Sure, okay.
Thank you. Just following up, Councilmember Hall's comment and experience on this field, there might be a lot of people selling hot air out there, so tied into performance is critical. I believe that if they're a serious firm with experience to obtaining these kind of grants, they will be willing to go on a performance basis. If it's just selling hot air, then they will run away. As soon as you tell them that, will be some sort of performance, based on performance, salary, or payment, if they're not serious, they will run away. So you can kind of select the real deal there by seeing who is more serious by having this kind of conversation, I guess. So, and then GMA, I think, is a resource that we need to explore. Might not be the one, but I think that would be good to know if they have something already right there to offer to all the cities. Thanks.
Yeah, I think so. It'll give us something to at least be able to go and talk to some of these folks and see what's available and what's out there. And we'll, of course, we'll continue with GMA and anybody else that has it. And thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Moving on to item number 7, under Finance. Presentation of fiscal year 2021 third quarter budget initiative progress report.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm here to give you all an update, the third quarter update on the budget initiatives that have been approved for fiscal year 2021. We'll start with the administration department. So there were a total of 10 initiatives right now. 2 of those have been completed or substantially complete, and 8 of them are progressing as planned. And on this next slide, you will see the list of projects. And as per council members Zapata's request from the last update, we've added a column here for the estimated completion date for these projects. And then you also see the status of each of these projects. So, and I will not read through them. I'll just quickly move to the next slide. In community development, there are a total of 4 initiatives right now. All of them are progressing as planned, and you will see that on this next slide with the estimated completion dates for each. And then in EPW, we have a total of 14 initiatives across all the 4 funds that are within the department. 2 of these are substantially complete, and 12 are completed, 100% complete, and 12 are progressing as planned. And you will see the list right here, starting with the Solid Waste Fund, which has about 4 projects, all of them progressing as planned. And then we have the Stormwater Fund, and this is the big project that they have, the Stormwater Master Project list, and you have all the projects within that master project listed here. Most of them, almost all of them have been completed except for one, which is progressing as planned. And then you have the Water Fund, the 7 projects here, all of them progressing as planned. The SCADA communication system has been completed. And then within the Fleet Fund, we have the 2 projects. One of them is progressing as planned, which is an ongoing program, the citywide vehicle leasing program, and then the on-site parts store that has been completed. Moving on to the fire department, they have a total of 8 initiatives, 1 that has been completed and 7 that are progressing as planned. And then this next slide shows you the list of projects. And then within the police department, there are 7 initiatives, 1 that has been completed, 5 that are progressing as planned, and 1 that is delayed. And this is the list of all those projects. And then within recreation and parks, we have 22 initiatives, 2 of them completed, and 19 progressing as planned, and 1 that has been delayed. And the next 3 or 4 slides list out all the projects, all the 22 projects. And then in transportation, we have a total of 17 initiatives, 9 progressing as planned, and 8 of them either delayed short-term or long-term, and we have the list of projects here. And your packets should include the details on all of these projects. So if you have any questions on these projects, I'd be happy to answer them.
Floor is open. Mayor?
I don't have a question, but I did want to let everyone know I've got a dear friend that is having a medical emergency, and I need to leave, so I apologize for not attending the rest of the meeting.
Questions, comments? Okay, thank you. Item number 8, presentation of the fiscal year 2021 third quarter budget report. Mr. Luckett.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is our third quarter budget report, so we're going to provide you an update on how we're performing within our FY 2021 budget. The first few pages of our report provide just a brief narrative of how overall each of the funds are performing. I'll start with some of the details on the general fund. So if you take a look at page 6 of the report, this provides you with some additional details about our revenues and expenditures for the general fund. As you can see overall, we were expected or projecting about $70.7 million in revenue through March. We've received about $73.2 million of revenue, which gives us a positive variance of $2.5 million. Most of that is from our sales tax performing better than anticipated, but also includes some positive variances within our property taxes and our licenses and permits. On the expenditure side in the general fund, we were projecting $62.9 million in expenditures through March. Our expenditures actuals have been at 59.4, which gives us a positive variance of $3.4 million. And you can see that's split across salaries and benefits, operating and transfers and other. And the table at the bottom kind of splits those same numbers on our expenditures across the various departments within the general fund. Moving on, our next few pages highlight our enterprise funds, the water and sewer fund, solid waste fund, and stormwater fund. Those are all performing well in terms of revenues being right at projections or a little bit ahead. Our expenditures on each of those 3 funds are all within projected amounts, so those are performing well. We get to our recreation and participation fund. This fund, our revenues are below our projections, but our expenditures are also below our projections as well. That fund has performed well in the last few months, and as you can see, actual revenues have exceeded actual expenditures through March in the rec participation fund. Our hotel motel fund, revenues here are definitely less than what we anticipated in the FY 21 budget. But we are managing those expenditures so that they are in line with the revenues that we're receiving from the hotel motel tax. And then in our E911 fund, revenues are right on target at $1.4 million, and our expenditures in that fund are slightly below our projections of $2.1 million. This page gives you an overall picture of all of our funds across the city and how they're performing through this third quarter of FY 2021. And then finally, the last section of our report provides all of the projects that are currently on the books for FY 2021 by department. Just gives you the revised budget, expenditures, encumbrances, and the available budget through the end of March. So that concludes our third quarter budget report, and we'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Number 9, approval of the fiscal year 2021 year-end budget amendment. Laura.
So we are here for the end of year budget amendment for fiscal year 2021. And tonight we have some adjustments in the general fund, the capital projects fund, solid waste fund, the group health fund, and the T-SPLOS fund. Starting with the general fund. So in this table, the top section, we are showing the revenue recognition or reduction. So the first item that you see is to recognize additional sales tax revenue of $1.2 million. So we had done an adjustment at mid-year. Now this is at end of year, we are expecting another $1.2 million additional revenue based on the forecast that we have done, based on the actuals that we've been receiving so far in the fiscal year. So that's $1.2 million. And then we would like to recognize $1 million in revenue from the Rapstick insurance settlement that we have received. The third one that we have is to recognize revenue from the sale of abandoned property. That's $34,000, and this is within the police department. And then the fourth item is to recognize revenue from insurance reimbursement for Hurricane Zeta at an amount of $42,339. Moving on to the expenditure recognitions in the general fund, the first item is to increase the budget for legal fees by $125,000, and this is because our legal expenses have been on the higher side this year, and hence that ask of $125,000. And then we are also requesting to increase the budget for communication services by $250,000, and I'd like to explain this a little bit. So the communication services line, this is basically the line from where we pay the bills for AT&T, Verizon, Charter, Comcast, etc., for our cell phones, internet, the T1 lines, the fiber internet speed upgrade, and any other business lines that we have. This expense has been on the higher side this year, and budget staff had alerted the IT department about it. And IT staff has done a great job of looking into the cause of these higher expenses and have identified that a number of the AT&T lines are using sunset services that are out of contract, and these have been subject to rate increases based on the tariffs. And that's why that has resulted in the higher expense. However, in the past few weeks, the IT team has investigated these AT&T lines, and they have removed about $4,000 a month in charges, and they plan, I think they are about to do another $4,000 a month in the next coming week. I don't know if they've already done it or not, but that we should see a decline in this particular expense in the next fiscal year, hopefully, based on all the work that the IT folks are doing. So that was about the communication services, and then we are also requesting an increase in the budget for bank fees and charges by $72,000, and this is because of the transactions, the increased amount of online transactions that we've been having. Hence, those charges have gone up by and we're requesting $72,000 to be added. The next item we have is to increase the budget for police software and equipment purchase, and this is the $34,000. You saw the revenue recognition of that on the top half of the slide. So this is the expenditure portion of that. And then you see the $42,339, the expenses related to Hurricane Zeta. The revenue portion was on the top half of the slide. So these are the items we are proposing to recognize in revenue and expenditure in the general fund. This next slide just kind of gives you a summary of what the impact on the general fund would be. So we have the total general fund revenue increase or decrease of $2.2 million, which is an increase here. And then the total, and then you have the general fund expenditure request of $523,339, which would leave us with a fund balance of $1.7 million. Moving on to the Capital Projects Fund, here we have one request, and this is to recognize revenue and the associated expenditures with the Enterprise Vehicle Lease Program in the amount of a little over $1.8 million. And this is basically just an accounting adjustment to recognize the revenue and expense associated with recording the vehicles leased from Enterprise. And this is basically to record them as an asset in our books. And then within the Solid Waste Fund, we have one increase to the budget to purchase the baler for the recycle center. This had been approved during the budget process at, I think it was approved at $200,000 to purchase a baler, but when they went out, it came in higher by about $36,000, hence the department is requesting this additional amount. So with that purchase, it would leave them with a fund balance of $1.8 million. And then within the Group Benefits Fund, staff is proposing to recognize revenue from the stop-loss reimbursement and also the expenses associated with that in the amount of $1.5 million. That would leave us with a fund balance of a little over $700,000 in the Group Benefits Fund. Finally, we have the T-SPLOS Fund. The revenues, when we had actually budgeted for these revenues during the budget process, we were in the midst of COVID, and we had taken a conservative estimate, but the revenues actually have been coming in higher than anticipated, way higher than anticipated, and so we are proposing to recognize additional T-SPLOS revenue of $4.8 million. So those are the items we have for end of year budget amendment. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you for a great presentation. You guys always do a great job. Just a quick question. I missed the $72,000 in the bank fees and charges. Can you go over that again, please?
Yes, so basically the reason for that, this is totally the merchant service fees that the city pays for credit card transactions that we accept. And looking at our statistics and the transactions over this past year, the biggest jump that we've seen is with our property tax. More people paid online this year than they have in the past. And so the biggest bulk of the increase is due to that, the property tax.
Okay, that's something I'll be bringing forward to another session. Thank you.
Comments?
Yeah, I have a hard stop coming up here soon, so with that, I'd motion to approve.
Thank you.
Moving on to Recreation Parks, number 10, consideration to approve a revised memorandum of understanding between the City of Roswell and Friends of Mimosa Hall and Gardens.
Dean is going to provide the presentation tonight. Just as she's getting the presentation brought up, want to acknowledge Mr. Mike Harris in the room back here, who's our president of Friends of Mimosa and been a partner in this process of getting the MOU coordinated between both the department and Friends.
Thank you for that. Good evening. I'd like to also offer my gratitude to Mr. Harris for joining us tonight. But good evening. It is my pleasure to present this proposed recommendation for a revised memorandum of understanding between the City of Roswell and the Friends of Mimosa Hall and Gardens. I will start with a brief background and update as to activity over the past year in order to offer an explanation as to why a revised MOU is necessary. So, Friends of Mimosa Hall and Gardens, incorporated in 2017 as a nonprofit corporation founded with the vision for sustainable preservation of Mimosa Hall and Gardens, where history and culture engage and uplift community. The initial memorandum of understanding was executed in 2019 in order to prepare for an Earth Day green ribbon cutting ceremony on April 22nd, 2019. Since then, since 2019, with Friends of Mimosa Hall and Gardens, they have been very active in programming, incorporating virtual options and activities for families, adults alike, covering a wide range of topics, including history, gardening, culinary, and environmental education. Friends of Mimosa has also progressed with fundraising actions, marketing, and networking connections in order to build support and to increase their membership base and to support us in our efforts. The Friends of Mimosa Hall and Garden Solar Roof Project has been a key capital project and goal for the organization since the very beginning. The project consists of 4 phases, and I'm pleased to say that it is almost completed. Phase 1 and 2 are complete, meaning that we have a new roof on Mimosa Hall, which is good news, and the solar panels were installed last month. Phase 3 is the installation, connection, the testing of the solar thermal batteries, the inverter, the boiler, the pump, and the computer control module in order for the system to be fully operational. The system will be charged, and Georgia Power will install a power meter. The system will go live, and the house will be powered by the sun shortly thereafter. This is due for completion around July 6th of this summer, so 2021. The last phase is to seek official net zero status under the Living Building Challenge. This will take place after the batteries go live, and there has been a 1-year time period of documented power consumption and production. Mimosa Hall will then earn the title of the oldest net zero home in the United States once it has received this designation. Phase 4 completion is scheduled for July 4th, around that time period, 2022. To give you a quick overview, financial overview of that project, this project has been supported by the contributions of financial donors, a grant of in-kind supply material by Georgia Pacific, the Sonnen Battery Company, and the architectural work contributions of Camden's Construction, a Roswell-based environmental design company. Total Friends of Mimosa expenditure for the roof project is set approximately at $294,000. The city of Roswell supported this project through initial contribution commitment of $35,990. But after the project started, it was discovered that further work was needed with a repair for a roof beam. The Friends of Mimosa group graciously offered to cover that cost, and the total city contribution to the roof project became $34,377. The city, on our side, we have also been very, very active in progressing with the site and development as well, working with Friends of Mimosa to accomplish tasks both on the grounds and for the house in preparation and planning for opening. This includes archaeology, correcting liability issues such as the pool, both interior and exterior construction, and hardscape. And the images you see reflect all that work. Just to provide a brief update on the certificate of occupancy work overview, I would like to first state that we have accomplished an archaeological survey on the grounds. The first report draft was received. No major findings were found, but recommendations in case of further development were suggested. Completion of a new copper roof on the back level of the house, along with porch reconstruction to prepare for the elevator lift, were completed. The brick walkway around the reflecting pool was replaced to correct deterioration and slip hazards. And the certificate of occupancy work for the first floor was divided into 2 phases, and we are currently active within phase 2. Part of this work is to address liability issues on the grounds that include the on-site pool demolition with geotopographical testing and advisement as to the correct way to fill in that cavity. The interior work of the building completed to date include rough HVAC, plumbing, and electrical with a preliminary inspection. Drywall work has recently started as well for the restrooms. Upcoming certificate of occupancy work includes further mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, along with painting and flooring, hardscaping around the northeast corner of the building, and installation of an elevator lift will address ADA parking and accessibility to the house. So in regards to the MOU, while the preliminary MOU of 2019 allowed for an immediate understanding and availability for a specific event, the opening, The progressive Friends of Mimosa activity and city development of the site over the past 2 years prompts a MOU revision to more clearly outline the agreement between both parties. This is also a necessity in anticipation of public access to the house and grounds within the year, increasing community engagement, and to more clearly establish the working relationship between both parties as we transition our focus into new goals and projects. Section 1 of the revised MOU outlines the authority and responsibility of the city. It does establish placement of a city liaison, which is designated by the department director and is currently myself as Historic Assets Manager. But it establishes that placement of a liaison and use of staff resources. It outlines adherence to city policies and procedures such as strategic planning, financial procedures, sponsorships, and naming. It maintains city responsibility to manage general operations, site access, and scheduling. It establishes proper protocol for collection or property possession and documentation if we get into collections and exhibits and displays. It creates a Friends of Mimosa membership benefit for Roswell's historic house museums in order to further support Friends of Mimosa efforts. Section 2 outlines authority and responsibility of the Friends of Mimosa. It confirms their vision and ability to fundraise and program and development. It lists city expectations of Friends of Mimosa as a nonprofit support entity, which is representative of the city in activity and purpose. It institutes a decision and communication hierarchy and flow between the city and the board, and it adheres Friends of Mimosa to city permitting policy. It establishes responsibility in the instance of any grounds or site damage made by Friends of Mimosa for the duration of the MOU. Section 3 is regards to marketing and reporting. This formulates marketing guidelines and demonstrates the city's commitment to promote Friends of Mimosa achievement. It confirms commitment to document the city and Friends of Mimosa partnership, activity, and support within an annual report for distribution. And all marketing efforts will follow current city community relations guidelines. The terms of the revised MOU, they automatically renew after a 2-year term based upon execution date. Both parties may request a review with a 30-day notice after the first year, and either party may terminate this agreement at any time with a 30-day written notice or termination in which neither party will be responsible to the other for future cost or expense associated with the MOU. The previous or the current MOU is terminated upon signature and execution of the proposed revised MOU. So complete actions so far, thorough staff evaluation. Friends of Mimosa Hall and Gardens, their executive board has reviewed and we've had discussion with them regarding the proposed MOU. And there has also been preliminary legal review within the city. There's no direct financial impact. And at this time, Recreation Parks, Historic and Cultural Affairs, we present to Mayor and Council for approval and recommend a move to execute this revised MOU between the City of Roswell and Friends of Mimosa. And I'll be happy to take your questions at this time. Thank you.
Great presentation. Thank you for doing this. I think it is very important. Obviously, I'll just say I'll abbreviate to the Friends have been absolutely great for the community, historic preservation, the environment, and really happy to be able to make this official. When I had originally read, I just had some comments, and now I just actually thoughts, and I just jotted them down. All pretty small, really small, but again, I just want to make sure we're doing this right. So 1.31. Let's see, where did it go? 1.3, wasn't it? Oh, there it is. So 1.31. I just want to make it clear, and I think we should specify just a third-party consultant will be contracted when the city deems necessary and funding secured. I just want to make sure that it's, that's my expectation. I would assume that's the expectation of the Friends. Does that sound right?
Yes, sir. In agreement, but of course, when the city deems necessary.
Yep.
And when funding has been secured.
Right, because I just want to make sure that the city would not be obligated to hire a consultant or anything like that if the city didn't deem necessary. So that was 1.31. Next one was 1.7. So 1.7, it says must be approved and/or signed by city. And I would think it has to be approved and signed, not or, because I would expect there would need to be an official approval from, for any loans or anything like that. So that was just getting rid of the and/or and just changing it to and. And then here's actually more of a question, 1.8. So the city will not charge the Friends rental or usage fees for scheduled activities or meetings. And then I guess just my question there is it unlimited? And how does that work? And just wondering what your thoughts and really staff's recommendation, as well as Mr. Harris, certainly, curious for any insight. But again, I just want to make sure we're doing this MOU the best way we can.
Sure. In response to that, it's definitely not unlimited. It is based on timing of the request, also of current activity and the scheduling, and that's something we would work through with the individual requests as they come in.
And I saw that's in there, so I definitely saw that piece was in there. It's more of when I say is it unlimited, if at the moment there's nothing scheduled, is there the opportunity to schedule something, every Saturday night in perpetuity? And I guess that's just, and I'm seeing a shaking of the head of no. And then I guess just that's where my question, we don't have to decide tonight. This obviously would have to come to council, but just wondering if we should put any clarification in there on expectations or usage. And then there was somewhere where I'd seen a comma was needed, but again, I can address that with the city attorney here later. I think that was basically everything that jumped out at me. But again, I think it's been a great partnership. Without this, I think this only, cements the great partnership, and definitely appreciate the work that you put into this.
Thank you for your comments.
Councilmember Plummer, if I can just comment on the usage, and we've had that ongoing conversation, and as we looked at, and you're correct in referring to kind of the calendar in the Friends of Mimosa side, where they've got a notification of 24 months in advance, and the intent was to give them the opportunity to secure their fundraising, because they have to reinvest that money back into the property, so there's some advantages to the city in doing that. And we also know that some of our friends groups and booster clubs have large events and small events, and as we started to get into how do we evaluate what constitutes an event, and if we put a limit on it, but they have an event of 7 people, does that then take away one of their major events? And that was kind of part of our conversation also in the next clause below that of their monthly meetings. Generally, we'll host those with a lot of our booster clubs, baseball, soccer, in our facilities. We didn't necessarily want to commit that to Mimosa Hall, because there could be an opportunity to have an event or an activity at Mimosa Hall where then that monthly meeting could be moved to some other location that was better for a meeting, but when we had events, say in the springtime. So tried to create some flexibility in that to move the pieces of the puzzle around for the benefit of both the city and Friends in this case.
And I did read 1.9 and had no concerns with that. I think that definitely makes sense that we make available meeting space, basically anywhere in the city that's available. So I fully support that and want to be a great partner. Again, it's just, I think what I'd like to see is from staff, just 1.8, to your point, making sure that just it's not a 3-person event every Saturday, and I know it's not going to be, but again, I want this to actually be a great model and template for future organizations, because again, I think the Friends have been fantastic, and this is a great way to really be a poster child for going forward.
Well, with that, in my Friends of Mimosa mask, I move that we move this forward to the council meeting.
Well,
Second.
so for clarification, is that with the updates discussed, or is that without the updates discussed?
You may meet with the legal department or any other department you'd like to make those changes and bring them forward to council for approval.
Okay, if that's the case, I certainly support that.
I did.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just following, I guess, one point of Councilmember Palermo, what would be the mechanism to do not allow to block every Saturday for 6 months? So nobody else in the community will have the possibility
Schedule a meeting
and the
until 7
opportunity
o'clock. It doesn't
to
go till 8 o'clock.
reserve this. There's any mechanism that won't allow to reserve way in advance a block of 6, or 10 or 12 Saturdays in a year?
So from staff's perspective and coming and attending a number of meetings with Friends of Mimosa, the goal and recognition of Friends of Mimosa and the city is for the property to be a successful model, not only of community access, but also revenue opportunities within that, both for them to reinvest back into the facility and for the city to recover our operating costs. And so I also think that there's just generally a capacity perspective from Friends of Mimosa and talking with them that there's only so much fundraising capacity that they have as a board and an organization. And so in those conversations, they're not looking to use the facility for every weekend for their fundraising. They recognize the business model and the need to create opportunities for the community to enjoy that facility as well. So I think we co-share those goals and objectives. And no different than really any of our facilities with our booster clubs as we evaluate whether it's the lacrosse board or the soccer board on what they're looking for to accomplish and making sure that we balance not only the fundraising opportunities in our fields and facilities, but also the community access. And there's no one clean number. And that's why we haven't put it in here, because it's a little bit different sometimes in the season and sometimes in the year. And so to lock it down on a specific number can be potentially short-sighted, both from the city and the Friends perspective. And it's something that we work our way through the calendar as we start to see the needs and demands of the property and what's advantageous both for the city goals and Friends goals. And really the MOU outlines that this is a partnership for the success of both organizations and ultimately for the property and the benefit of the city.
Yeah, no doubt it's for the benefit of the property and everything, no doubt about that. But still, I want to discuss this project with legal department to see what kind of mechanism we can do that, so to avoid this kind of, because again, that is a public property, was paid with taxpayers' money. So everybody have the right to reserve, pay the proper fee to utilize for events. I'm sure that there will be, friend of Mimosa will use this not only for fundraising, because you're right, you're not going to do 20 fundraisers in a year, but they can use for social events too. So my point here is that I want fairness, that anybody in the community who reside in Roswell and wants to pay the proper fee to utilize the property will be available. So that is my concern, but I will discuss probably with legal department what kind of mechanism can be incorporated to the agreement to guarantee anybody in Roswell to be able to access and enjoy an event or organize an event in this building.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I gotta leave, so if you have an item that you want or need my vote for, we need to do it when we come back.
Okay.
Or we need to do it at another meeting.
Okay.
Okay? And frankly, if we're gonna schedule a 2-hour meeting, it needs to take
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. So, and is it possible to share your screen?
I can.
Okay.
Is there something on here that I need to pull up?
No problem. Because actually, then again, we did share it last time. So, as this committee will remember, this was brought forward a number of months ago. There was a request from another council member for me to defer it a month just to see if there was an opportunity to kind of find some common ground. And of course, there is some disagreement on this topic. And that's why I really do want to just clarify it, because I do just see this as an important topic to instill trust with the residents. And basically, as a reminder, so our current ethics guideline says that council members should recuse ourselves if we have a conflict of interest. Basically it says that we should avoid the appearance of impropriety. So that's what it says today. Today it says we should avoid even the appearance of impropriety. But those rules do not require us to recuse ourselves from a zoning vote if we've received campaign contributions from an individual or business seeking council approval. And again, as I've mentioned, I feel this loophole has undermined citizen confidence in the integrity of your council. And I think it is important that any resident, any individual coming to a zoning hearing, that they feel that their voice matters. And with that, an applicant, of course, has the ability to present their request, present their position. They do not have the 5-minute limit that residents have, and there's been a number of different aspects around it. So ultimately, we've discussed this a lot. I don't want to have to turn it into another long debate, which we've certainly had in the past at a prior committee on this. But again, a couple clarifications just to make sure everyone's aware. First of all, this proposal ensures that any application will always have a quorum. So any applicant will always have a quorum if this were to pass. Again, what this is passing as well is starting out initially with a voluntary resolution. That's what this request is for tonight. As a reminder, this proposal does not restrict any campaign donor's ability to choose to donate to candidates or council members. This proposal does not restrict any candidates or council members from choosing to accept or deny a campaign contribution. This proposal also does not restrict any council member from supporting any legislation that benefits their campaign donors. This proposal is purely to address specific zoning-related applications. And also another key is this proposal only applies to situations where a council member knowingly accepts a campaign contribution from a contributor who would then profit from a zoning decision. So the key word is knowingly. So that's an absolutely crucial aspect of it. And again, this is something where, as city council members, we vote on hundreds of things per year, and so it is a very rare occurrence that that this would come into play. So this is not, this is something where even if a developer chooses to give a large campaign contribution to a council member of their choice, there are still many different votes throughout the year that council member is able to vote on. It's just if that, for that example, if that developer is here presenting a request that they personally profit from, that's when, if any one of us have accepted a campaign contribution from them, that above the $100, which is the reportable amount in the state of Georgia, then we should recuse ourselves from that one single vote. And that's what this is. If we go down to packet page 170, it gets into just the ordinance and detailing what I just spelled out. And you'll see on the bottom of packet page 171 and the top of packet page 172 in red, that's where the update is. And so that's really the meat of what this update is. So we already have a large, long ethics code. This is just updating that one piece right here. And then if we move to packet page 173, this is really what we're really proposing tonight, which is just purely a statement of intent to follow it. So just a voluntary resolution. And then if we move down to packet page 175, is really just the origin of this. And the question just started, would you support mayor and council members recusing themselves from voting on zoning applications if they knowingly have received financial contributions from someone profiting from that application? I believe this will reduce the perception of conflict of interest and be helpful for our city long after any of us are serving. So that's really the origin. That's my thought process and my goal on this. And then just packet page 176 is the petition that I had with Roswell residents, and that is something where a council member has brought up it was less than 500 people that signed it. At the same time, I feel from frankly many that have not signed it that this was a concern and is a concern with zoning applications. And the last thing I want to mention before opening it up for discussion is just that I want to make sure, again, clear and direct profiting is what we're referring to, and that's really my goal here. And ultimately, there's a lot of subjective aspects on, is someone opposed to the project? Do they support the project, but they have exceptions? They just want certain conditions added. There's a lot of gray area. The one thing where there's no gray area is just purely, does the person financially profit from it? And that's what this is looking to address. So I know we have some differences of opinions on this, but I certainly hope there'll be support for this resolution, and certainly open to any discussions and addressing any concerns.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Palermo. I'll open it up for any discussion. I see Councilmember Tyser.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilman Palermo, for presenting this tonight. I've studied it. There are many issues and many concerns that I have here, and I could go into them, and I can spend a long time discussing them. But from my standpoint, I make a motion to deny.
Do I have a motion to deny this request? Do I have a second? I have a second from Councilmember Judy for deny. Is there any additional discussion, questions? Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. Well, there was a rush to avoid discussion, but I'm going to thank you for the opportunity to continue the conversation that some council members want to obviously avoid. I think that this is just
Point of order.
Common sense.
Point of order.
Common sense.
Point of order.
Common sense.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
And good
Hold on just a
ethics.
minute, Councilmember Tyson.
And then,
Councilmember Zapata,
good ethics and common sense is applied here.
Zapata, I'll let you do your comments. Can I just see what the point of order might be, and we'll get right back to you?
Yes.
Sure.
My point of order is our rules of engagement, specifically call that we don't insult the other member of council. I just heard an insult come from him, and I'd like him to retract that and then continue with his statement, please.
What was the insult?
If you would, just complete your statement. Go ahead.
Okay, so so it's just, from the point of view of pure ethics, and common sense. So I think that this will be very healthy for the city, for the residents, for the taxpayers, and the people of Roswell. And I appreciate Councilmember Palermo bringing up this item back in June 19, I believe. So I think that that will be very, very healthy for our democracy, our residents, and the future of Roswell. So I think that I don't see any problem with that. Actually, I was receiving $100 on my campaign maximum, was my policy, my personal policy. So definitely I don't see any problem of this proposed legislation from Councilmember Palermo, and I'm totally in support of this legislation. I think will be a huge example, not only for Roswell, but for other cities as well, how we do business in Roswell. And I think that we've been discussing for a long time, so probably we're not going to discuss much tonight, since this conversation has been for almost 2 years. So I express my support on this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson.
I'm not aware of any corruption that has happened here related to this issue, and until that's pointed out to me and brought to me, I can't support this.
Councilmember Hall.
I'm very much in favor of this, and I'll bring some examples to the table as to how this is different than what exists and what state law says. First of all, in my campaign, I had returned donations from people that potentially could come before this council. And so that was a conscious decision, as painful as it is, because council races are expensive. But about 3 years ago, I can't tell you the exact date, I did notice a campaign contribution made to 3 council members by the Duke Group that was not disclosed, and those council members were ruling on. It is true, and they were not disclosed. I brought it to the attention of the council, and the applicant reapplied, disclosing it. So that was the story, and that's how these things happen. So that's why we need something like this.
All right, Councilmember Hall, I appreciate that. I'm going to ask that we don't have any more specific examples. If we're going to have those kind of examples, those ought to be in closure, not here. We're talking about personnel issues, and I would just ask that we don't have those going forth. Obviously, there were some issues in somebody's mind, or we wouldn't be having this item. So let's just talk about the item.
Okay, thank you. But it is public record.
Councilmember Judy.
Yes, I sat in here when there were checks shown up on the screen that evening. They were disclosed by the applicant. City Legal said that everything was done above board, 100%. There was no issues. I guess some people know stuff that others don't. And if there was an issue, it probably should have gone to something other than us, gone to ethics, et cetera. There was none of that. So making that comment is totally out of line. Secondly, there has been zero nobody up here, implication or even proof of any of this. So going down this, where does this stop? That's the reason I cannot support this tonight. I have not been able to support it because it's not clear. State law, there's legal ramifications of this as well. Everybody's gonna have their different opinions, but at the end of the day, I'm all for stamping out corruption. Show us where it is and we'll do it. This is nothing but politics. Let's move on, let's vote, and let's move this behind us.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? We have a motion, Councilmember Wilson.
We, when running for office, are required to disclose every campaign contribution that comes in over $100. And those rules were followed. That was public information. The elected officials that are being referred to followed the law. The decision, the particular issue in mind that is being brought to case, I think, was supported by one of the largest homeowners associations, because they preferred that use over a more intense use. So again, I think to bring this up at this time it's just politics, and it's, the issue is covered by state law, and I also believe by my own personal integrity, and I would hope by the trust of my colleagues.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Michael. So it's all about ethics. And ethics is not a science. It's not a mathematical science. It's not number. So there is it's a spread on tolerance for ethics. So I still don't understand why all this council is not all on board with 2 feet supporting this. That will bring more transparency, reinforce the ethic from the state. The state is great to have this, but we are going to reinforce it. I really don't understand the purpose of opposing to something that is going to be improving the ethics for the elected officials now and the future of the city of Roswell. So again, it's not about show me the corruption thing. No, it's just about ethics and be more strict on the ethics. And I know that we all think differently in terms of ethics. We have different parameters, different tolerance. But I think that this will be kind of leveling the minimum for from the ethics point of view. So for now, and not only now, but for the future. So I think that, again, it's very innovative and reinforcing the minimum required by the state. And in this particular case, I have nothing to oppose to reinforce the state minimum requirement if we can do it better. So I'm all for it. So I think that I hope that my colleagues here will continue thinking about and hopefully we'll come to an agreement and realize how important is this for the city and the future of the city.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to deny this request. Is there any further discussion? All in favor to deny this request, raise your hand. That's Councilmember Tyser, Councilmember Wilson, and Councilmember Judy. All opposed of denying this request, raise your hand. To think about that. Councilmember Zapata, Councilmember Hall, and Councilmember Palermo. So this item fails to move forward because of a lack of a majority. Next item on the agenda is item number 11, which is Committee Member Palermo, which is consideration for a resolution in support of native plants for the city's future landscaping projects. Councilmember Palermo.
And this item, because it was a copy of when we did it before, it said agenda vote, but actually there's not an agenda vote. This is purely for discussion. And that being said, I know Councilmember Tyser has an engagement tonight, so I'm happy to do 11 now, or I'm happy to yield to 13 and do 11 after.
Is there a preference from the committee on what to do?
13 is just going to be basically a minor discussion to get the ball rolling. So, I mean, I think this is probably more important to have input and
All right, let's have the discussion on item 11. I know that we brought this forward before. I'd like to have this discussion complete.
Great, that's fine, thank you. I'm generally supportive, so I'll take a look at the tape later on and generally supportive of what y'all are bringing forward, so thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the movement of the items around. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
So, item number 11, we've obviously discussed this multiple times at committee, and really appreciative that that last time it actually moved forward, where we actually have this coming to June city council meeting. So that's why there's no need for a vote tonight. This is on the agenda for the June council meeting. We have this on the committee just to discuss some updates. So basically, there was a meeting with some staff members that touch basically plantings, with some community members, as well as Councilmember Wilsey and Councilmember Hall, and it was a very productive discussion. And so what we have here is, if we actually go to starting on packet page 166, we have the resolution, and it has red lines. These red lines were actually created by Director Leatherman, and I think get us really close to a great resolution. And so basically the purpose of tonight is I just want to do two things. One, raise your awareness to notice these red lines. So basically this takes an earlier version of the resolution that I had brought forward with the help of some members of the community and discussing with different individuals, and then now has Director Leatherman's update. What I want to discuss is, if we look at the paragraph that starts with, if you can go down to the next page, Mr. Fisher. It's bullet 4 crossed out, and then, so now I guess it would be bullet 5. So what I want to do is look at just adding something, and I got with Mr. Leatherman ahead of time, and I think there's an update I want to make sure to get really staff's feedback on, but basically adding something in the sense of adding just one sentence or two sentences of just basically what the city will pursue, that basically the city is going to pursue looking for funding for this, or looking for public and private partnerships, something along those lines. But again, that's where I want to make sure to get with Director Leatherman and make sure we find something that's feasible and that we think will work for this city council. So I'm not prepared. I have some draft language, but Mr. Leatherman gave me some good feedback. So what I'd like to do is, when I come back for June, it will be this resolution with the potential of one or two sentences added to that one paragraph as I consult with Mr. Leatherman. So that's my proposal here. I just want to raise it to the committee to see if there's any concerns or any recommendations on. Certainly, I can make sure to have Jana or Mr. Leatherman send that out to the entire council prior to the meeting. But basically, that's what I want to be the plan.
Okay, so we've heard those comments of some possible changes after more discussion. Councilmember Judy.
So I wasn't involved in the conversation with some of the other council members and the team and staff. The sentence added worries me a little bit. In circumstances where replacement of non-native with native plants is not feasible, the city department shall file a notification and exemption request for review at an appropriate city council committee meeting. My worry here is that now the department has to file notifications and prepare a presentation and statement and all this, and then city council is going to hear this and make a decision in a committee meeting whether this is okay or not. And so I'm worried this is adding some work to staff, and I'm also worried that I'm worried it's going to the wrong place for an exemption request on a committee meeting. So that's my first problem that I saw that I have a little bit concern over. And then my second one was, again, I think I like that we moved the percentages, the years back a little bit, but I'm still a little worried about the percentages on here being as high as they are as soon as they are. So those are my two concerns. Again, I support this. I'd just like to hear a little bit on why that sentence was put in, and then also any discussion around the percentages remaining at the level they were.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilsey?
Yes, thank you. I'm also generally supportive of this, and I've had a chance to speak to a lot of the folks who were involved in bringing it forward, as well as some other North Fulton master gardeners and a couple of landscape architects as well as staff. So I think a lot of the concerns that I have heard from those folks all really kind of come around to number one, and also some of the stipulations that are in number two, actually. Whenever an architect or a landscape architect or gardener is choosing, they typically like to choose the right plant for the right location. And I think we can do that with a preference towards native plants, but they do have to consider the soil, the sunlight, the water, drainage, the purpose, the budget, and sometimes aesthetics fall into that as well. So, while there are lots of beautiful natives, there are also a lot of other beautiful and useful plants that either contributed to our cultural history or in fact to our history here in Roswell. So I don't want to completely eliminate a good plant from consideration in the landscape. So basically I think this ordinance, as far as providing a preference for native plants and encourage the use of native plants whenever possible, is definitely headed in the right direction. So with that, just considering the purposes and the places where we're planting, I just want to make sure that we're putting in realistic percentages and we're not throwing out a lot of good in order to do something else that's good. So, and I'm also concerned about bringing exceptions to city council when we have, a staff that is knowledgeable in this area and knows how to choose the right plant for the location. And as long as we give them the guidance to choose native plants as a preference, just making sure that they have some leeway in making the right decision. So, Mr. Letterman, I'd love to hear your insights on what the percentages are and kind of just the types of plantings that you do.
And I also want to be careful to be speaking about the Parks Department, Recreation, Historic, and Cultural Affairs. There are other departments that are impacted, and Transportation and Public Works primarily have different sets of challenges. And so, as I think about the Parks Department, as you look at the 50%, which is the first threshold, we've demonstrated that we're able to do that now. East Roswell is a great example. And we had a long conversation about this in the meeting with council members in the community of, frankly, I don't know if we can hit the target directly all the way right out the gate in the 3-year process. We can set the target, we can start to work, but we haven't done the pilot program. We haven't done the, I'll call the analysis on, what those impacts are at the 60% level and the 80% level. But I also recognize that we've got to start. We know we can do 50, so then the question becomes, can we do 65? And then what are the impacts associated with that? And then once we hit the 65 mark, what's that challenge to get to the 80% mark? And it's really hard to put your finger on and say, we like to come to council with certainty. In some cases, we're just not able to do that, and this is one of them. That's where the feasibility language frankly comes in, is because we're uncertain. There's been instances where staff has made a decision where there is latitude given where, hey, if this isn't possible, we'd like you to, you have the latitude to make that decision. While this council may be okay with that, the next council may not, or there could be a different interpretation of what's feasible. Staff may say something is feasible, and the community may emphatically disagree with us that something is feasible or infeasible. And so it gets us in a very kind of tenuous circumstance when we're trying to make an evaluation on a resolution that's passed by mayor and council with very specific stipulations, and then to have latitude to say, well, you can run a feasibility analysis and just make your best judgment. Kind of honestly, it puts us in a position where it's very difficult to understand what council is looking for. And so that's why, in looking at this, and I'm using our tree bank as kind of an example of that. We have in our tree bank allocations on an annualized basis, essentially a fund. It's generally around $30,000 to $40,000 of funding that's available for a future project that isn't yet defined. And then we bring those projects back to committee for authorization, essentially, where the budget funding has already been there, but the project hasn't been authorized. That's the general concept that I use and why I bring it back to committee. I think that is still open to kind of interpretation or best process. I just don't want to put myself or my staff in a situation where we've made a feasibility call that then becomes a contentious public issue that somebody disagrees with.
Councilmember Claremont.
Excellent, thank you. Some great discussion, and Mr. Leatherman, again, appreciate how helpful you've been in all this discussion. So some good points by council that I want to address and just give a little bit of the background. I think Mr. Leatherman just explained part of his thought process on that sentence, but I'm gonna explain kind of, how we kind of got there. So basically, as Mr. Leatherman said, obviously 50%. That's something I believe there's even been some projects we might have done that before, and then whereas in future years after doing it, the percentage gets higher. And there's going to be just potentially situations where there'll be a project, there'll be a purchase, whatever it might be, where 50% can't be hit, or if it's a later year, a higher percentage can't be. And we want to make sure that there's an easy exception process. And so what I had brought up to Mr. Leatherman was, I see two possible solutions. One possible solution is you just define, feasibility and what that looks like, and ensure that it's just something clear to the public or something along those lines. Or you don't go through that and just you come to committee to really give a heads up. I don't envision, and I'm more than happy to clarify, I don't think it should be a long presentation or anything like that. It's a matter of, we have this project, we were supposed to hit 50%. We're not able to buy 50%, and here's why. And then basically, and the reason it comes to committee is no decision by council can be made at committee. But it's basically, that's where it's an FYI and just confirming that there's no concerns. And the way that's confirmed is someone in Mr. Leatherman's department raises it. And if for any reason council has issue and there's any pushback, that's the opportunity to motion to move this to council. But what I'd expect is there's no motion to move it to council, because that's where Mr. Leatherman or his team would show, here's why we're not doing 50% in this purchase. And the advantage that Director Leatherman had brought up was they could come up with a long list of potential feasibility aspects now. The issue is who knows what might come up in the future. And by doing it this way, just creates more flexibility, that there's no need for Director Leatherman and his team to kind of go ahead and define feasibility ahead of time. It's just the opportunity, if an issue arises, they bring it to committee. And as long as there's not a motion, a second, a majority vote to move it to council to go ahead and still find a way to do it at that 50%, that solves that. So that's why there was the committee process, and I'm certainly open to any other ideas as long as it is something that's clear, it's documented, it's it's, and because when I say documented, because it should be something that ends up being publicly visible on just, we didn't do it and here's why, because of the shade here and the trees that need that shade, there weren't enough available, here's where we looked, something along those lines. I mean, just quick, easy, straightforward. So that's the committee aspect. And then as for the percentages, as a reminder, this is purely for new plants being built, being purchased. So this is not anything existing. This is not changing anything that's already there. It's just if we're going to purchase, this is really pushing us to purchase more native plants, which has great benefits to it. And again, it's something where we've heard how in year one, at least 50% very feasible and clear and known. And then as the percentage get higher, I think from things I've read and learned from some others, master gardeners, et cetera, it really does look like this is easily achievable as well. But we've created that committee option where if for any reason it's not that the Parks Department or whichever department, Public Works, Transportation, it's not that they failed if they didn't reach 65%. It's just they come and say, here's the challenge, here's why it wasn't feasible, and just ensuring that there's no issue or no objection, which I don't anticipate. So that was the thought process behind that. So I'd encourage this council, if you have any suggestions for improvement or different ways to look at it, I certainly would like to hear that. And again, I'll be getting with Mr. Leatherman on looking to add a sentence or two to that new item number 5. But so this is all helpful discussion. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Michael. So I think it's a great, innovative idea and initiative that will, in the long and the midterm, will save money in maintenance. And saving money in maintenance allows us to invest the money somewhere else. So I think it's a great idea. It's a great initiative, and I hope that the soil is good for native soil, is good for native plants, because if not, it's huge. We have a huge problem here. If native soil is not proper for native plants, then this discussion becomes irrelevant. We need to focus on some other problem here, much more serious than this. So I think it's great. We are going to learn a lot along the way, which is nothing wrong with that. In terms of the accountability of staff for the next 3 years, I want to make it clear, the next 3 fiscal year, no calendar year. I understand the concern, and I don't know if this council will be willing to consider, like in fiscal year 2022, 40%, fiscal year 2023, 50%, fiscal year 2024, 60%. And then we'll see from there how this program is. We give it 3 years to evaluate this program, how successful we can make it happen. And maybe on 2025, we go to 80%, who knows? But, we need to start somewhere. And I don't know if it's something that everybody will feel comfortable with these goals. And again, we do our best, and then if we don't get to 40, we get to 35, then, well, we just try better the following year, and it's not the end of the world in this case. So I think it's a great initiative again. It's going to potentially save money on the long run, and we are going to respect better the soil, and might even be very helpful for the topography we have here. So I think that we're on the right track. We're not too far, I guess, to come to a compromise and come forward with an innovative initiative regarding native plants on native soil. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Judy.
Yeah, real quick, since we're 3 hours into this now. I agree with Councilman Zapata on the percentages. I think 60 would be a good top end in year 3, fiscal year 3. I was even thinking 50%, 25, 40, 50, something like that. But I could go on those numbers Two, and I might have missed it, did we figure out where the funding is coming from for the pilot program?
No.
Okay, so I think we need to figure out funding for the pilot program in this, because the pilot program is very important. And, is it all coming from Parks and Rec? Is it coming from Public Works? Is it coming from where? And then, any cost over the next few years that are shared between the possible impacted divisions should be addressed here as well. So I think that, and then in regards to number one, the last sentence, coming back to council committee, I'd like to work before June on figuring out something else. I think that has 5-hour committee meetings written all over it for no reason. So I'd like to avoid that in any circumstance possible.
Thank you. I think we would certainly all appreciate that. Councilmember Palermo.
Excellent, thank you. The pilot program and funding, which was the item number 5, I mentioned wanting to add a sentence or two there and getting with Mr. Leatherman on that. So we're on the exact same wavelength. So that's something I want to add in there and discuss. And then definitely happy to talk and hear some other suggestions instead of the last sentence of one, just keeping in mind that my goal is to make sure that it's easily public available, and if it wasn't committee approving it, or I guess I should say not objecting to it, then just making sure that there was clear guidelines on how that worked and all that again is publicly available. But I think there's a number of different ways we can accomplish that.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilsey?
Yeah, just one more comment. Another aspect of this that I'm really excited about is the education component and how we can educate the community about native plants and their value, and also the fact that some native plants are suited to different areas. There are some that love woodsy soil in the shade, and there are others that really thrive in the red clay in a wide open field with lots of sun. So I think we all have a lot to learn about in that area. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Palermo, did you get some input, some information you were looking for?
I did, thank you.
So y'all just work together on that. And that comes back in June to, I think we're coming straight back to me or to council. To council with that one, yeah. So you can be prepared for that. So we'll move on to item number 13. Committee member Matt Judy is consideration to incentivize new businesses in Roswell. Councilmember Judy.
Yes, thank you, Michael. So I spoke about this I believe at committee meetings ago. Mr. Stroud was supposed to be here this evening to supplement our conversation and had a family issue and couldn't make it to the last minute. Basically, the conversation we were having earlier about jobs and incentivizing jobs in the city, also incentivizing businesses. I did speak with the folks from Pickle Social maybe last week, trying to keep them involved on the east side there, keep them looking. Hopefully they'll come back around. But a statement they made to me was they were really surprised when they came to Roswell, the lack of incentives that we had in our toolbox for Roswell Inc. to incentivize them to come here. And I asked, well, what is that? And they said, well, we've done business all over the place, and all you all had was basically an opportunity zone. And that hasn't even been renewed yet. So with that being said, I think there's a few different divisions within City Hall that this would impact: community development, finance, our new economic director, Roswell Inc. What incentives can we provide through the city? And I attached one here that the city of Alpharetta has given out to create local jobs. And they reapproved that in 2019. It's pretty interesting if you get a chance to look at it. It's in, it's in conjunction with the state, I believe. And so the Georgia State tax credit programs. So is it that? Is it some places have hotel room incentives? So your company brings and fills up so many hotel rooms in the city. You get a certain abatement based upon those hotel rooms you bring. Is it impact fees that we're waiving in certain developments or businesses that are building a new business here and bringing jobs? There's a lot of different ways. I didn't put them all in this packet because what I wanted to do this evening is start the conversation with this council and with Roswell Inc., with our new economic development director when he gets here. So we have basically a toolbox when people come here to compete with the surrounding cities, because based upon the conversation, since I had that conversation with others, we're lacking in that area. So we talk about the right businesses here, and we need to compete to get those right businesses here. So I think the more research we can do as a council, the more research staff can do with Roswell Inc. and ultimately our new economic development director, and see financially what can we do? Where does the money come from? Where do the funding sources come from? What grants can we apply for? Where, what makes us heads and tails above anybody else around? Because right now we're just counting on an opportunity zone. So it was more of a thought process to bring to council tonight to get us thinking in that direction, because we really need to fill our toolbox to compete. And I know we all want to do that. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Is there any comments to go along with that, or just thoughts or anything at this time? I think we got some, go ahead, Councilmember.
So, again, Councilman Judy, appreciate you bringing this discussion, and I love the discussions that is just to, provoke some thought and discussion. I absolutely agree. I think with actually the Pickle Social and even just during that zoning hearing, in some of the applicants' responses, it was clear that Roswell's certainly been behind on economic development and really what we do, and definitely looking forward to really partnering together and making sure that we're targeting what's going to benefit Roswell. And I think there is a lot of economic development that really can. And again, to your point, Alpharetta is doing a pretty good job of it, and I'm sure there's some other places as well. So we definitely need to better arm ourselves, and a great opportunity and great reason to get that economic director here, as well as, of course, working with Roswell Inc., who really has their ear to the ground as well.
Thank you. Any other comments regarding the incentives? We've got some homework to do to start thinking about that and looking more into that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and from a staff perspective, I think that you would know better than I what areas that touches and what ideas. Maybe it's an internal staff committee that, again, that's up to city administrator to. But I think at some point, if they could report to us along with Roswell Inc. and the economic director, it'd be helpful for us to continue that conversation.
So too. Okay. Anything else? We're adjourned.